as a junior Justice Minister, have to strike. Now, of course, that's something that you review over time, that a new Prime Minister in particular has to take a real grip of and have a look at, and that's what we're doing.
The family of a teenage girl and her mother who drowned while trying to save another family member off the coast in Essex yesterday say they're speechless. A 7-year-old boy is still in a critical condition while 2 others are also in hospital. Emergency services were called to West Mersey yesterday. Chris has told us she called the Coast Guard herself.
One of the boys I could hear, he was on a floaty. He lost it, and then one of the kids started screaming, saying he can't swim. And the man that came went into the water, must have been a parent or a relative. He kept saying, it's my family, somebody come and help.
Greater Manchester Police has apologised for missed opportunities to potentially uncover a plot to attack a synagogue in Manchester. It's emerged officers had access to Jihad al-Shami's phone in the weeks before the attack last year. The details emerged during the sentencing of his friend and accomplice, Mohammed Bashir, who has been jailed over a separate plot. Iran has said that it considers an RAF airbase in Gloucestershire a legitimate target after the US used it for bombing raids. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has issued a statement condemning Britain for supporting America's war effort. It's after the US military deployed a B-1 bomber from Fairford for strikes on Tehran. And the price of oil has gone back above $100 a barrel for the first time since May. Donald Trump's threatened major military punishment for Iran after its allies, the Houthis, fired on 2 tankers in the Red Sea. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 77 points at 10,639. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather, showers developing in western and far northern Scotland tonight. Largely dry with long clear spells elsewhere, lows of 11. Sunny for most tomorrow with early cloud clearing. A few light showers in the far northwest, a high of 30 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:03 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Lots of ways to get in touch with us over the next 3 hours. You can phone 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp that number. You can text 84850. And of course, you can watch the whole 3 hours live on Global Player, on the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel. Right, we've got some interesting subjects for you to consider tonight, not least in this first hour, the fact that Andy Burnham, the new Prime Minister, it still seems odd saying Andy Burnham Prime Minister, doesn't it? But anyway, he has announced today that they're going to pause the scheme, which was due to start in September, to release prisoners early, to reduce prison overcrowding. He's paused it pending a review. Now, you just heard in the start of the programme there a quote from Jake Richards, the Justice Minister, who was a Justice Minister under Keir Starmer and was touring the studios telling us what a great scheme this was and how it was absolutely vital. It was started under Shabana Mahmood when she was Justice Secretary and then continued under David Lammy. And yet now it's being paused. Now, I offer no opinion on whether it's right, well, at least at this stage, on whether it's right to pause this scheme, because I think it is quite clear that the prisons in our country are vastly overcrowded. There was about to be a point, I think, earlier this year where we wouldn't have had any places left for new prisoners. So clearly something needed to be done. Now, I hope that Andy Burnham recognises the consequences of pausing this scheme, because it seems a little inconsistent when you have a Labour government 1 week saying this is absolutely crucial for the future of the prison system, and then the next week the same Labour government, admittedly under a new Prime Minister and a new Justice Secretary, saying we're going to pause it. We are now Thursday, 3 days after Andy Burnham became Prime Minister. How could they possibly have done the work to justify making such a radical decision? But on the face of it, it will be a popular thing, because I think some of the newspaper headlines that we've seen over the last few days when we look at the killers of Andrew Harper, that 2 of them are set to be freed early. When we look at the newspaper headlines, it's quite clear what most of the tabloid newspapers think. And I think they probably reflect a lot of their readers' opinion, saying, no, these people should not be released early. They deserve to stay in prison. And certainly with these lot, I completely agree with that. But it's all very well standing on principle and saying, well, I don't think these kind of people should be released from prison early unless you have an alternative to put forward. And it doesn't seem to me that anybody has the alternative to put forward. Maybe you do. 0345 6060 973. Is this one of those decisions that Andy Burnham has made in haste and is going to repent at leisure? He's reduced bus fares, which obviously people are going to think that's a great thing to do, but doesn't seem to have any clue where the money's going to come from to pay for it. And there have been other announcements over the last 3 days, which on the face of it are quite popular announcements. But do they stack up? Is there an answer to the question, where's the beef? Where's the research that's gone into announcing these new policies? To say that you're concerned about the cost of living is all very well. Everybody's concerned about the cost of living. But when you keep announcing things that are going to help, well, this sector of the community, that sector of the community, inevitably all of those things are going to cost money. And we all know that there isn't any money. So where is it going to come from? I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe you do. 0345 6060 973. Well, let's talk. Within the last hour, my LBC colleague, Tom Swarbrick, spoke with the Justice Minister, Jake Richards. We mentioned him earlier on. We just heard a little clip of him earlier. We're going to hear a little bit more of him now. He set out why Andy Burnham has suddenly halted this policy and why Sir Keir Starmer's government introduced it in the first place.
We have prison capacity issues. Now, I can talk about those, the fact that the Tories closed 23 prisons, they only built 500 places in 14 years, a complete disaster of a legacy. So we have capacity issues. But at the same time, of course, there are understandable concerns from victims about offenders being let out earlier than they might otherwise be. Now, that's the balancing act that a Prime Minister and a Justice Secretary, and indeed me as a junior Justice Minister, have to strike. Now, of course, that's something that you review over time, that a new Prime Minister in particular has to take a real grip of and have a look at, and that's what we're doing. And I think, again, your listeners and your viewers will understand, Tom, that when there is a new regime, when there is a new Prime Minister, it's natural and indeed sensible and common sense to have a look at these things again. So we paused it. There is a time pressure. There is some urgency to this, but paused it while we're taking stock.
Fine. You see, what isn't natural is keeping Jake Richards in his job. Frankly, I'm not saying he should have been sacked, but I think it would have probably been a good idea to move him. Because last week, he would have come on the programme and said exactly the opposite to what he just told Tom Swarbrick there. That's what people despise about our political classes, isn't it? That they can speak with forked tongue. Jake Richards is, I think, a good minister. He's a nice guy. But they shouldn't have sent him out there today to do this, should they? They need to get a grip of their comm strategy. I mean, that's part of the problem of the Starmer government, and it seems to be afflicting this government too. Well, let's see what former governor of Wormwood Scrubs Prison and the author of the book The Governor, who's now Reform UK's Justice Advisor, thinks of this. Vanessa Frake-Harris, welcome to the programme. Do you agree that this scheme should be paused, and if not, why not?
Good evening, Ian. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Let's turn the clock back, say, 6 months when the Sentencing Act was going through passage. Opposition MPs put forward amendments explicitly designed to block rapists, child groomers, sex offenders from being eligible to the early release. All of those Labour politicians, including the one you've just had on, voted against that because they looked at, well, prison beds are more important than releasing violent offenders back into the community. Now, of course, it's a new Prime Minister who, in my opinion, wants to be popular and has paused it. So, as per usual, this will create a huge crisis, not only within the prison service, but also the probation service. Many of the prisoners who were due to be released on the 2nd of September will have had their sentence calculations done, will have had all their probation checks done. And bearing in mind that for one prisoner, the probation checks can last from 6 to 8 weeks. That includes where they're going to live, what they're going to do, when they're going to report, all of that sort of thing. So it's a huge, huge thing for Andy Burnham to turn around now and say, well, hang on a minute, let's pause it. We're going to review it. We're going to review it with the Justice Secretary, the new Justice Secretary, Alex Norris, who I'm afraid to say has no experience, that is none experience within the justice system at all, has no idea how the justice system works. And I'm afraid to say the junior minister isn't much better, quite honestly. But yes, absolutely. I'm glad he's paused it. I'm glad he's reviewing it.
But how can Sorry, Vanessa. How can you say that you're glad he's paused it when you've just spent the last 2 or 3 minutes explaining what the difficulties are going to be?
Well, of course there's going to be difficulties because the Starmer government strolled right through it and said, no, this is happening. We don't care that there's rapists, violent offenders, sexual offenders going to be released early on licence. We don't care. What's more important to us is the beds that they're going to release. Never mind to say how many of those are actually ready for release. Never mind how many are going to commit further crimes, probably worse crimes, and end up back in jail. So, yeah, I am glad he's paused it. But who has to pick that up? It's going to be the prison service and the probation service.
But I was reading an article this morning that said if this goes ahead, by the 1st of November, there will be no prison places left. So, yes, my heart says you're absolutely right, and I don't want these people to be released at all. But aren't you just sort of putting the problem down the line? Because in November, if the courts can't send violent criminals to prison because there are no places left, I mean, what's going to happen to them? I mean, it's a complete muddle, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is, but it's a muddle of the Labour government. And to be honest, there are things that can happen. We can release all the non-violent offenders on early release. I haven't got a problem with that. But what I have got a problem with is the likes of the 2 killers of PC Harper being released early, doing 50% of a 13-year sentence, 6 years, 6 months. I do have a problem with that. In the first instance, a prison is supposed to protect the public. Releasing people like that early is not protecting the public. Releasing prisoners like that back into our communities is not protecting the public, Ian.
And I think the overwhelming majority of people listening to you say that will say bang on. That's absolutely right. Thank you very much indeed, Vanessa. That's Vanessa Frake-Harris there, former governor of Wormwood Scrubs and is now Reform UK's Justice Advisor. Well, Tanya Bassett joins me now, who I think has a rather different take on this. She's from the Probation Officers Trade Union, NAPO, who is herself a former probation officer. Tanya, I don't know how much of what Vanessa said you would agree with, but presumably the fact that this is a complete muddle, you would agree with that.
Hi, Ian. Yes. I mean, we have to look at this in the bigger picture, in that we have an overly punitive penal policy at the moment. And as on principle, NAPO would like to see some significant changes because we know the evidence shows that probation is more effective at reducing reoffending than prison is. And so there has to be more effective practice in the community in order to reduce reoffending and therefore protect the public.
For everyone, including violent offenders?
Yes. I mean, it's across the board. In terms of that, you have to be able to do that work in the community and environment that you live in. The situation we're talking about is we've spent the last 6 months consulting and negotiating and engaging with HMPPS about this new Sentencing Act and the changes it brings in. Our members were only told last week, maybe the week before, which people were coming out early. And so they've had a very truncated period of time in order to do the pre-release work. And in some complex cases, and that doesn't necessarily mean risk of harm, you would want up to 2 and 3 months in order to do that in terms of accommodation, etc. So we're already working on a very truncated period. What the Prime Minister has done has now paused that and potentially made that even less time for our members to make robust release plans. And I hope if the Prime Minister decides that he wants to go ahead with this, which I believe Number 10 have said they might do in September, that he at least pushes it back a couple of weeks in order to enable our members to do their job properly. Because probation is in a workload crisis. And that has been the case for 2 years. We've constantly picked up the extra work from prison overcrowding, which obviously is an issue, but probation is beyond capacity. Our members are working ridiculous hours in order to do their day-to-day work. So anything like this really has a significant impact on them. Bearing in mind it's the summer holidays, we know that attendance at work because of annual leave drops to almost 50% of staff. It was always very bad timing, and we advised HMPPS not to do it over the summer. But ultimately, this is actually now adding to their stress. And in order for people to come out of prison early, it has to be done safely. And my concern is the Prime Minister has made a knee-jerk reaction to a couple of comments and also the PC Harper case, which I'm not undermining. It was a heinous crime. But we have to have a justice system that isn't knee-jerk. We have to have a government that doesn't respond to every single thing in a knee-jerk reaction and actually sits back and takes the time to look at things. And I'm concerned that that isn't happening.
Tanya, thank you. That's Tanya Bassett there from the Probation Officers Trade Union, NAPO. Well, you've heard the arguments for both sides there. Which side do you fall down on? Do you think this scheme should go ahead as planned on the 2nd of September? Do you agree with Tanya that it ought, if they do go ahead with it, it needs to be postponed to give probation officers enough time to do the work that they have to do? But, I mean, I'm not sure this is a very good sign, is it? That Andy Burnham, at the first sign of gunfire, comes out with something that he probably knows the majority of the electorate will support without actually thinking through the consequences. I think that's quite worrying. 17 minutes past 7.
This is LBC. Listen on the move with the LBC app.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. So who's ready for the best summer yet? Unwind in your choice of 4- and 5-star hotels in over 75 destinations like Kos, Lake Garda and Gran Canaria. Plus, you'll get 22 kilograms of baggage included. Book now and save £200 per couple. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. After National Protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play. That's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the Nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN. Subject to coverage.
This is the life. Sipping a glass of Chardonnay without a care in the world. La vie est belle, non?
John, for the 5th time, please stop doing the voice. We're in Sussex.
Visit a vineyard by train and save a third with Group Save on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Check you're on track for a happy retirement with PensionBee's easy-to-use app. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
19 minutes past 7 on LBC. Susie on Twitter. She says, I was thinking about what Anne Widdecombe would have done to increase prison places, and I remembered she wanted to create more prison spaces rather than let people out early. And then she's got she sent me a little graphic, and these are the 3 things that Anne Widdecombe suggested. And this was back when she was Prisons Minister back in 1996-7, where she said, take over disused holiday camps to convert them into low-security prisons with temporary accommodation, using porta cabins from decommissioned Norwegian oil rigs as additional prison space. borrowing a prison ship from the United States to create extra spaces in the prison system. Has anybody even thought, I mean, I'm not sure any of those would work nowadays necessarily, but has anybody really thought about that? Because the key is, yes, to change the sentencing structure in our justice system, but also, if you run out of prison spaces, you can create them relatively easily and relatively quickly. Maybe not tens of thousands, but certainly you could find a few hundred here and there, I would have thought, using ideas like that. Or not. 0345 6060 973. And what does this decision tell us about Andy Burnham's style of leadership? I mean, if he does go down this road of not just pausing the scheme, but abandoning it, and we get to the beginning of November and there are no prison places and the courts are clogged up with people who have been sentenced to many, many years in prison, but they can't find a space for them, what happens then? I wish I knew the answer to that question. Mick is in Leeds. Hello, Mick.
Ian, how are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Palmer's early release scheme was doomed to fail from the outset. To release violent criminals early into society, especially those criminals who killed a police officer, up in the face for serving police officers who are out there trying to protect us.
Yeah.
What he should have done is, he should have said, there are 2/3 of prisoners that are low-level, non-violent, 50,000 potential prisoners, non-violent, that they could release early. And they chose to ignore that. Completely out of touch with the public, and shows how incompetent he was as a Prime Minister. Andy Burnham's done the right thing to review it, and hopefully he will say there will be low-level, non-violent criminals that will be released into the community. To add to that, he could say, well, they're going to serve the rest of the sentence doing community service, for example, clearing fly tipping, which will save the taxpayer billions, and they could pay back to society. So just a bit of common sense and a bit of respect for public safety wouldn't go amiss.
I agree with that 100%. It's something I've been saying probably for the last 10 or 15 years on this programme, that people are being sent to prison for short sentences, which, yes, it punishes them, but you can't certainly be rehabilitated within 6 months or a year. And a lot of these offences, in terms of being a danger to society, most of these people are not a danger to society, although you could argue that having then spent time in prison, they become a danger to society because of what tricks that they learn in prison. So I totally agree with you that there are many ways that we can punish people. We can tag people, we can curfew people, we can fine people, we can get them to do community service. There are all sorts of different ways that people can pay their debt to society. And yet we are in a situation now where people who've been convicted of violent offences are going to be let out. That is a scandal. You can't just blame Labour for that. This has been going on for years under the Conservatives as well. They didn't do any better. But we've got to get to a point where our prison system is viable. At the moment, I think we have about 87,000 people in prison. That is down a little bit, but not down enough. In 1993, I think when Michael Howard became Home Secretary, there were 44,000 people in prison. Now, Mick, do you believe that we have become a much more criminal country over the last 20 years? Because I do not.
I don't think we have, but I just think we're just too quick to put people into prison. And what's happened, Ian, is because we've done that, we don't have enough prison places. And do you know how much it costs to build a new prison cell, just one prison cell? £100,000. Now, that is completely and utterly morally wrong when we've got people going to food banks and people can't afford to heat and feed children. It's just wrong. And again, Ian, it's just a lack of common sense and understanding of, walking in the public shoes. These they've got no idea, no clue. And what's even worse is not one of them went against this new policy when it went through Parliament. No. And that is a serious concern.
Mick, thank you very much indeed for your call. Sean says, I may have a solution. I'd like to know how many non-violent prisoners there are in prison. All I need to do is open up a laptop and let the non-violent prisoners, tax evaders, fraudsters, etc., out on a tag to free up lots of space. Well, you're saying roughly what Mick says, aren't you? This would go down well with the public and keep the violent prisoners in for their full term. That's Sean in Hertford. I do agree with that. I mean, inevitably, there are going to be people say, yes, but why should you just be soft on so-called white-collar crime? But, I mean, let me give you an example, which I always quote in these circumstances. Jeffrey Archer was sent to prison, was it for 2 or 3 years, for perjury. Very serious offence, and I'm not belittling it in any shape or form. But what good did it do to send Jeffrey Archer to prison, I ask you? Because he wasn't a danger to society. He did something wrong, and was then sent to prison and made an example of. I mean, sometimes there are exemplary sentences that serve as a deterrent to others. But I don't know what it cost to keep Jeffrey Archer in prison for 3 years. But it would have been a substantial amount of money. Wouldn't his debt to society have been better paid by fining him several £1 million? I mean, he could have afforded it, but I mean, several £1 million is going to hurt anybody, even if they are very rich. I think there could have been many, many more innovative solutions to punishing him and people in a similar position. So I'm not suggesting there should be an amnesty for people who've committed non-violent crimes. But Sean and Mick were absolutely right in what they said. If you want to free up places for violent criminals, and that's what we all want, I want violent criminals to serve longer sentences in prison, because the longer they're kept off the streets, the less, they aren't able to recommit offences, are they? I mean, that's part of the whole point of imprisonment. But what's the point of putting someone in prison who's maybe a serial shoplifter, for example? Serious offence, absolutely. Does a prison sentence work in deterring them from doing it again? Only while they're in prison, I would suggest. There may be other ways that you could punish people. Let's go. Oh, we have some breaking news, by the way. In other prison-related news, the Ministry of Justice has just confirmed that the Southport killer, Axel Rudabakana, has been transferred from prison to Broadmoor Hospital, the secure psychiatric unit in Berkshire, following an assessment by psychologists. We might have a little bit more on that later. Right, Jane is in Camden. Jane, what would you like to say? Hello.
Oh, thank you. Hello to you too. I'd like to say very briefly, I know there's a lot of callers waiting. Non-violent prisoners, what about enrolling them in the army? There's a shortage of different jobs in the army that they could do, I'm sure. In September, the Prime Minister's thinking of letting these people out. What they're going to do, there's no jobs for them unless he could get them jobs now by cleaning the streets, because in London, in the West End, it's absolutely the pavements, especially outside restaurants, absolutely full. I know there's a water shortage, well, so they say, but they could at least do one round here, of using the water. I know a lot of the gardens and all this, people who have lovely gardens, they can't use it. But I think this is a health and safety part, and I think it's 3 months now that we've had this gorgeous weather, and the pavements are filthy. Anyway, having said
I have to say, I'm in London every day, Jane.
Yes, of course you are.
I'm not in Camden, I'm in Westminster. But
Westminster.
Westminster seems to me to be quite clean.
I'm on the Westminster side, but in this small area where I am, it's quite awful. Anyway, having said all that, I'm going back to the prisoners who, non-violent ones, to go be enrolled in the army. There's a lot of different types of jobs they could do. However, I've said my piece, and I thank you so much.
Well, I thank you, Jane. You're very polite. We love polite callers, don't we? That's Jane in Camden there. Enrolling prisoners in the army, I'm not sure the army would welcome that particularly. There are all sorts of ethical issues about doing that. I mean, there's an age issue, I suppose, because let's not assume that all white-collar crime is committed by the under-30s. A lot of it is committed by the over-50s. So I'm not sure that idea hangs together, but love to hear your views on that too. 0345 6060 973. Ethan says, surely we need to focus more on the rehabilitation of those who are in prison to make sure a large majority won't end up back inside. Will this not reduce prison numbers? Well, it would. But that's a long-term thing, and successive governments have ignored that. It is a scandal that so many prisoners leave prison still unable to read or write. I mean, surely, if they're incarcerated for 24 hours a day, surely that's the point where the education system should step in and make sure that when you're released, you can at least read, write and count. Maybe it should be a condition of release. There's a thought. We'll take more of your calls in a moment. It's 7:30 on LBC. Let's get the news headlines with Amelia Cox.
Andy Burnham has paused the early release of some prisoners in the next round of a scheme to tackle overcrowding. Under legislation introduced by the previous government, some 6,000 inmates were due to be freed in September. A 7-year-old boy is still in a critical condition after a woman and teenage girl died after getting into difficulty off the coast of Essex yesterday. Emergency services responded to several people struggling in the water in West Mersey. And police in Manchester have apologised for missing a possible opportunity to prevent the synagogue attack in the city last October. A phone was seized from the man who carried it out weeks beforehand as a separate terror plot was foiled. LBC weather, showers developing in western and far northern Scotland tonight, largely dry with long clear spells elsewhere, lows of 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
When your daughter's wedding guest list is double-sided, enjoy every hand-clapping second of it. Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our best savings rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply. T's and C's apply.
Last night, I was watching an episode of Amadeus where Mozart
exploded, launched another Real Housewife during Shiv Roy's wedding night, where she asks Tom for an open
sandwich, Chicago beef filling, cooked by a chef in a
pastel Regency gown. Oh, quite steamy.
Get Sky, Hey You, HBO Max, Disney Plus and Netflix together in one simple subscription. Go to sky.com.
Requires Sky Stream and Sky Ultimate TV subscription. Minimum broadband speed of 30 megabits per second recommended. 18 plus.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:33 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls on prison places in just a moment. But first, as you heard there in the news headlines, Greater Manchester Police has apologised today after admitting that it arrested the man who carried out the attack on the Manchester synagogue last October before that day in connection with an alleged rape. But officers didn't search his phone when making this arrest. I mean, can you believe that? Liam Gotting has all the details. He's LBC's Northwest reporter. Liam, I think virtually everybody listening to this programme now will find that absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this all comes after today's sentencing of 31-year-old Mohammed Bashir, described as a long-standing, committed jihadist who travelled to the UK Defence Academy near Swindon with Jihad al-Shami, who, of course, carried out his own terrorist attack on the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester last year. The pair made the 10-hour round trip to conduct hostile reconnaissance before deliberately disposing of their phones. The prosecution said today that Bashir and al-Shami stopped at the Defence Academy for around about 15 minutes or so, and al-Shami made notes regarding the security arrangements for the base on his phone, titled Espionage. Now, Counter-Terror Northwest Assistant Chief Constable Rob Potts has told LBC why the defence site was targeted in the first place.
The UK Defence Academy was identified because the perception was that there were some links between the UK Defence Academy and the Israeli military. So we believe that that's the reason that they identified and focused more on that particular military establishment.
Now, Iain, the pair were also part of an Islamic extremist WhatsApp group called Aspiring to the Ranks of the Elite, in which Bashir sent more than 2,000 messages, including messages about getting ready for war. The prosecution said there was also a lot of anti-Semitic material and discussions about wanting to die as a martyr. The court heard that Jihad al-Shami met Mohammed Bashir back in 2023, and they both shared an extremist worldview, regularly discussing violent jihad. The pair found a corner of their local mosque that they believe to be uncovered by CCTV to discuss their plans of attack. But unbeknownst to them, they were actually picked up by CCTV and audio that was recovered by Greater Manchester Police and Counter-Terror. The court heard that Mohammed Bashir left the UK for Pakistan on October the 4th, 2 days after Jihad al-Shami's terrorist attack at the Heaton Park synagogue. Bashir then returned from Pakistan on the 27th of November, where he was arrested at Manchester Airport. Here's Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb sentencing Mohammed Bashir at Manchester Crown Court earlier this morning.
As to the nature of the violence you were planning, you told al-Shami you were really excited, and he said that once you went on the mission, you would not be coming back. And you said, of course. As you left the mosque that evening, you said that this time next year you will be in Green Birds, which is a reference to paradise and martyrdom. I am sure that you and he intended to commit an act of terrorism against a military target using weapons such as crossbows, in which you expected to lose your lives. It was to have nationwide and international impact.
Now, as you mentioned before, Iain, Jihad al-Shami, who carried out the terrorist attack on the Heaton Park synagogue attack, was actually arrested twice before by Greater Manchester Police, on one of those occasions having his phone seized. Now, a statement today from Greater Manchester Police's Chief Constable Sir Stephen Watson says that the Independent Office for Police Conduct engaged in conducting a review into GMP's past investigations into al-Shami. And it said in conducting an internal review, it became apparent that GMP had seized al-Shami's mobile devices at the point of arrest. The significance of the data content of those devices was substantial in respect of evidencing an extremist mindset. But he goes on to say that regrettably, I can confirm the significance of the information stored on al-Shami's devices was not realised, as they had not been examined before the terrorist attack took place on the 2nd of October. They now say it's for the IOPC and the coronial inquest to determine the impact of not reviewing the contents of that device, but issuing an apology for any more distress that today's information may have caused. They said they were only able to now release that information because today's legal proceedings against Mohammed Bashir have now come to an end. He was sentenced to life in prison and will spend at least 16 years behind bars.
Liam, thank you very much indeed. That's Liam Gotting there, LBC's Northwest reporter. It's an extremely worrying case, isn't it? Because we all want to have confidence in our police forces. And I'm not pretending that one single incident like this should be necessarily taken as an example of the way that other police forces act. But I think Greater Manchester Police have a real job now to convince their local population that they know what they're doing. I mean, look, I'm not an expert in policing, but if you see somebody's phone and they're being accused of a serious offence, wouldn't you actually think it was maybe a good idea to look into it? I mean, just a thought. Right, John, back to prison places, says, remove the foreign prisoners back to their original country first. Well, I totally agree with that. If it was that easy, I'm sure it would be done. But I think there has been progress on that in the last few years, and more foreign prisoners have been deported. But if you look at the proportion, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I'm pretty sure I remember a figure, was it 14,000 out of the entire prison population are foreign criminals? Yeah, get them out of this country. We don't want them here. Unless you're a human rights lawyer, I suppose. He says, making a gross generalisation. Right, let's go back to your calls. It is time to speak to Catherine in Muswell Hill. Hello, Catherine.
Hello, Iain.
Hi.
Morning. Oh, not morning. Evening. Sorry. Not a good start. I think it's important to remember why people are in prison in the first place. We're there to punish them for what they've done, to deter them and other people from offending, to protect the public, and ideally to rehabilitate them. And I would have been much more encouraged by Andy Burnham's announcement if he had addressed the totality of that, rather than just saying, let's pause this plan whilst we review. And as you rightly said at the top of the hour, how much time has he had to? He's had no time to review it. He might have said, "Look, one of my priorities is going to be to review this policy by the previous administration." But he didn't say that. We're just going to pause it whilst we review. So, to me, it feels a bit like a crowd pleaser without getting into the detail of why our prisons are so full. And it's also worth remembering that 20% of our prison population are on remand. And in some prisons, particularly in London, for example, Pentonville Prison, it's nearly half the prison population that are remand prisoners. And that is because our criminal justice system has suffered decades of underfunding and other problems. So the progress of people's cases through the courts is really, really slow. And that's another huge blockage in the system. And as Prime Minister, I just think it's so important for Burnham to address the totality of that so that people understand the complexity of the system. And rather than just coming up with a one-liner, essentially, because of course nobody wants dangerous people released prematurely.
Well, again, I agree with, I think, everything that you've just said there. I think that so far, the indications are, and we're only 3 days in, maybe it's too early to judge, but so far the indications are that Andy Burnham will react to any event and feel that he needs to issue a statement, a tough statement, showing him to be a tough guy. I get that there's always a temptation to do that, but sometimes you do need to actually get all the information at your fingertips and be able to make a judgment. And it seems to me that here he reacted to the statement made by the wife of PC Andrew Harper, and that's where it's all started from. And I get it. None of us want to see his killers released early, and 2 of the 3 of them are slated to be released early. So I completely understand the anger of PC Andrew Harper's wife and his family. I think all of us would be angry in those circumstances. But you can't just react to one very, very sad case, can you?
I completely agree with that. And, judging on just the last 3 days, there is a concern that we're entering into territory of just doing things off the cuff, which have enormous public appeal. And of course, we want a fairer society. Of course, we want one that's more affordable for people who do struggle with daily cost of living, and that will include bus fares and other transport fares. And yes, we want a safer society where we're not releasing people into the community who have done very, very serious offending. But I, for one, and I've worked in the criminal justice system most of my career, am concerned when a statement like this is made, it's just taking a tiny sliver off the top of the problem without using the opportunity, because it is suddenly in the public eye. Suddenly we're all looking at this problem, albeit maybe only for a day, and saying, oh, it's shocking that these people will be... Yes, it is shocking. 100% it's shocking that someone who has 2 people in this case who've offended so grievously should be released after a relatively short period of time. But, a prison like Pentonville, which was built about a century ago, was built for literally half the number of people who are now living in there. It's got double capacities. You said at one point, let's make it a condition of release that you have to that you have to be able to read and write. That would be great, Ian, but I've been in prisons a lot, and there isn't the facility for that. A lot of the rooms, a lot of the resources that would have been used for education, which is part of rehabilitation, obviously, have been subsumed within the prison estate for other purposes because of the overcrowding problem, because of the I know it just gets on people's nerves, this, underfunding. Gets on my nerves too. But that's a reality. If you want to rehabilitate people, if you want to teach them to read and write so they have a better prospect of being rehabilitated and continuing that process when they're back in the community and ideally getting a job and getting on with their lives, well, how are you actually going to do that safely in a prison? You're going to have to get someone who comes in, who's qualified to do that, who has this necessary security structure around them to make their job safe, and the process of actually teaching people realistic and safe and positive. That isn't so easily achieved. I'm not saying it's unachievable. I actually do think it's achievable. I do. But it takes a real shift and a really detailed look at how the whole system works. Yeah. Going back to the remand issue, if we've got 20% of the prison population, like I say in London prisons, it's often nearly 50% on remand, what can we do to get our courts processing people more quickly through that system?
I don't know what.
But I would have much preferred Burnham, when he announced this, to say, before I look at this, I want to look at the totality. I can't just switch off this tap and open this.
No, you're absolutely right, Catherine. One idea that would free up certainly a lot of magistrates' courts is to reduce the number of speeding cases that are going through the courts. You might say, well, I have a personal interest in this, which I do. But it is incredible, the number. I think in some courts it's like 70 or 80% of the cases are for people exceeding a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, having done 23, and therefore they've tipped over the 12-point mark. It is ridiculous. Get rid of some of those cases, make them automated, and if people want to appeal, fine, they can have their day in court. But is it really necessary for all of those cases to go through magistrates' court? I don't think so. Mike says, early release was never a good idea. Starmer was in government for 2 years. He had time to start building something like a new prison, but he didn't. This is why he's gone already. So people shouldn't be released. But the problem we're facing is because Starmer did nothing. Well, I'm not an expert on the prison building programme, but you're right, I don't recall hearing a lot about new prisons but then again, you heard a lot of rhetoric from the Conservatives about new prison places, but never quite sure how many actually got built. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question at 8 o'clock. Belle Ribeiro Addy, Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill. Andy Preston, who's a political commentator, who's a former independent mayor of Middlesbrough and deputy mayor of the Tees Valley, and who is a Conservative Party donor, it says here. Tony Earnshaw, he's founder and chief executive of the UK Commercial Group, a cleaning and facilities management company in the northeast, and Shihab Khan is a political editor of Zeteo UK, which is a new media organisation established by the British American journalist and commentator Mehdi Hassan. At one point, my deputy on this programme back in 2011, 2012. How times change, eh? It's 7:47.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
We know the pub trade is in real problems. So what about this 20% lift that's been given? Emma Reynolds is Chief Secretary to the Treasury.
32,000 pubs, clubs and live music venues will benefit, and we're raising this money in two significant ways. Firstly, by reviewing the business rate relief on those businesses on the high street that cause social harm, such as vape shops, but also on clamping down on those online businesses to ensure that they pay the VAT that they are due.
Let's get straight to your reaction.
This is nothing more than soundbite politics trying to reverse what major damage the government has done.
I just think there's been a shift in drinking culture, but I don't think it's actually anything to do with the cost.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers. Because we do things differently. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no. Just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. So who's ready for the best summer yet? Unwind in your choice of 4- and 5-star hotels in over 75 destinations like Kos, Lake Garda and Gran Canaria. Plus, you'll get 22 kilograms of baggage included. Book now and save £200 per couple. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. After National Protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
Ever get giddy renewing your car insurance? Fantasize about finance offers or paying your service bill? Probably not. After all, the best bit about driving a BMW is driving it. So leave the admin and skip to the best bit. Choose a new BMW 1 Series or 2 Series Grand Coupe by the 30th of September to enjoy a year's insurance, 3 years servicing, plus 2.9% APR representative. Search BMW, skip to the best bit. BMW UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. BMW Finance, T's and C's apply. Insurance age restrictions and exclusions apply. Whew, that's the admin over with.
OMG, you guys. This Arabian deep cleansing mud bath is just amazing. I can feel all the toxins draining out of my body.
Babe, you're literally sipping Prosecco right now.
Take the train to a country spa and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? A record 9 years running.
This is LBC. Message Iain Dale on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
It's 10 to 8 on LBC. If you live in the Peak District, I'm going to be at the Buxton Literary Festival tomorrow and Saturday, doing a session tomorrow with Steve Richards, the political commentator. He's written a biography of Tony Blair. I've written one about Margaret Thatcher. So we're going to have a little discussion about them all tomorrow afternoon. And then on Saturday, in the lovely Opera House, the very one that I fell off the stage in 2022, I'm going to host a panel discussion with 3 generals and Colleen Graffy, former Bush administration official, about the world situation and what it takes to be a general. So I'd love to see you there. Do say hello if you decide to come. Right, let's go back to your calls on prison places. Andy Burnham has made quite a controversial decision today, which I think on the face of it will go down well with a lot of people, saying he's pausing this early release scheme. But the more you look into it, the more problems there are with that statement. I think that's what we've established in this hour so far. Let's see if Barry in Rochester agrees. Hello, Barry.
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Yeah, so I think in general, Andy's right to review the situation around this. But I certainly think in the lady that you spoke to from the probation service, the thought of them pausing their reviews at the moment just seems crazy, and they should be carrying on with that to not compress those timelines any further. But the violent criminals, I think there should be no way that they're included on this first wave of releases, just to at least give them time to complete everything they're doing. It just seems that in a rush to meet things, they're just not considering all of the options.
The other thing is, if he's going to hold a review, who's going to carry out the review? Presumably the same civil servants who instituted the pause scheme, introduced the early release scheme in the first place. It just seems incongruous that 1 minute the government says one thing, and then the next minute, the same government, admittedly with a new leader, says something diametrically opposed. It just doesn't add up.
That seems to be the way of politics recently, though, doesn't it? That it's just swinging rapidly from one extreme to the other, and nothing's happening.
You see, when the Conservatives kept changing their leaders, they were still Conservative governments. I stand to be corrected on this, but I'm not sure there was a massive difference between the government policy of Boris Johnson and the government policy of Rishi Sunak, and we'll leave Liz Truss out of this for a moment. It was still demonstrably a Conservative government. Yet here, in the first 3 days, we've had 3 or 4 quite significant announcements which are diametrically opposed to what the previous Prime Minister did.
I guess that's to do with, trying to change the face of Labour. The current Labour Party has gone so far away from what the core voters wanted that they're trying to regain face and regain those votes from reform, essentially.
It's going to be very interesting to see what constituencies like the one that you live in the motorway towns do, because they're kind of barometers, aren't they? They if there's a Conservative government, most of the constituencies around you vote Conservative. If there's a Labour government, most of them vote Labour. So I wonder how the good burghers of the Medway towns are going to take to Andy Burnham. Oh, he's gone. Mark says, the Speaker Tanya just mentioned lower staffing levels due to summer annual leave. Why? Surely the staffing requirement is the same all year round. Therefore, the holidays need to be controlled. What if all LBC presenters said they wanted the same week off all at once? I never get this argument in public sector roles. It's a very fair point. I suppose the natural thing is that most people prefer to take their summer holidays in August, particularly if you have children, because that's when they're off school. So, but you're right. Not everyone can have the time off that they want. I mean, it's regularly where I've said I wanted to take a week off, and Sheila Fogarty will have beaten me to it. Doesn't happen that often, though. Right, let's go to Sarah, who's in Waltham Forest. Hello, Sarah.
Oh, hi. Maybe it isn't a rush decision because there's one particular case, which is the gang leader of the rape gangs. This is a case that's been, people are outraged by this for the last few weeks. To think that violent criminals could come out early, I mean, whose idea could that be? No, just don't put minor crimes in prison. They can do community service, have a tag, etc. That's what we should be looking at. How on earth are we thinking? We're also not thinking about the victims here. Imagine what these girls are thinking that these serial paedophile rapists are being let out early. It's just, so I think he's absolutely doing the right thing, and I don't think it's a rush decision. I think he probably knew about this a bit before coming into government, because it's not a new thing. It's not.
Well, he may have done, but it just seems a little bit coincidental that the commitment that he's made today comes on the day after that PC Andrew Harper's wife protested through the prism of the media about what was going on, and it's on the face of it. It seems as though he's reacted to that more than anything else.
Sure, that may have pushed his decision, but it's also possible because these stories, the sense of betrayal in the public and the sense of what this is doing to the victims, it's just not acceptable. So no,
all right,
they can't
Sarah,
come out
we hear you. Thank you very much. James is in Shrewsbury. Hi, James.
Hi there.
What would you like to say?
I just feel very thankful that Andy Burnham's done this. My mum was a victim of rape 3 years ago. She's a woman in her 60s. It was by her next door neighbour. It was a horrendous process. We had to go through a trial. And for her to get contacted by the parole service recently and be told that he could be released early, or the plan is to be released early, and there was nothing she could do about it. But secondly, the whole attitude of the parole service was all about him. It was all about connecting him with his family. There was no care or at all for my mum in any way, shape or form. And it's kind of victimised her, traumatised her all over again, all of our family. And we've been just having our fingers crossed, thinking we just please hope that he does reconsider this. So I just agree with everyone else that said that we shouldn't be living in a society where we think we're telling people that it's okay for murderers and rapists to just walk free. Can
I ask what his sentence was?
He was sentenced to 8 years,
and so he would be out after how long?
He would be out after, I think, 5.5, and he served just over 3. And we were being told that we were being prepared for this September or definitely this year. So. It's just for her to get, like I say, for her to get a call like that was pretty devastating. But it's more the manner of it, and the fact that this parole, that they don't care about the victims. It was her victim support officer that called her, and all he cared about was him, talking about his feelings.
It's appalling, isn't it? Because we now have a victims commissioner. I mean, I think we have had for like the last 10 years or so. And yet, your story illustrates that the mindset of the criminal justice system is still biased against the victims, and that should never be the case. Yeah. And look, James, if I was you, I'd be feeling exactly the same, and certainly if I was your mother, I'd be feeling the same.
Yeah, and they were talking to her about the courses he'd done in prison, and I mean, she just doesn't want to hear this. She just doesn't care. She does no why that was relevant, it's just the mind boggles. But so she's feeling a sense of relief. We're still obviously scared because it's just a review and things could still happen. But even just to delay it a few months would make her feel better. But it's still not right.
James, thank you for your call. You see, I mean, that illustrates the problem, doesn't it? If you are, or a family member is a victim of serious crime and you see that the perpetrator is going to be released early, obviously you're going to feel a tremendous sense of anger about that. I completely get that. I'm sure we'll be returning to this subject in the next few weeks. Coming up on Cross Question, it's your chance to ask our panel a question. We have with us Bel Ribeiro-Addy, Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill, Andy Preston, political commentator who's former independent mayor of Middlesbrough and deputy mayor of the Tees Valley, fellow Northeasterner Tony Earnshaw, founder and chief executive of UK Commercial Group, a cleaning and facilities management company in Newcastle, and Shihab Khan is the political editor of Zateo UK, which is a new media organisation founded by our very good friend from LBC, Mehdi Hassan. The number to call 0345 6060973. You can text 84850 and watch us on the LBC app Global Player or the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Prime Minister has said no prisoners will be let out as he announced a pause on the early release scheme. It was due to take effect from September in efforts to tackle overcrowding in jails in England and Wales. The initiative sparked concerns, though, that some violent offenders could benefit. Vanessa Frake-Harris, former governor of Wormwood Scrubs, told LBC it will create huge crises.
It's a huge thing for Andy Burnham to turn around now and say, well, hang on a minute, let's pause it. We're going to review it. We're going to review it with the Justice Secretary, the new Justice Secretary, Alex Norris, who I'm afraid to say has no experience, that is none experience within the justice system at all.
A teenage girl and a woman in her 40s who died off the coast of Essex yesterday were a mother and daughter from London. Police believe they were trying to help a 7-year-old boy who got into difficulty, who's now in a critical condition in hospital. Paul is a local yachtsman in West Mersey.
It's horrible for everyone. It's horrible for the locals. The atmosphere is very different on the island today. You know, everyone's very quiet. It's a very sad day for the island, really.
The Ministry of Justice has confirmed Southport killer Axel Rudikabana has been transferred from prison to Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital, but a spokesperson for the department stressed it does not alter his 52-year sentence. Rudikabana carried out an attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in July 2024, killing 3 young girls. Greater Manchester's Chief Constable has apologised for his force missing a potential opportunity to stop last October's synagogue attack. A phone was seized from the man who carried it out weeks before his rampage. The details emerged during the sentencing of his friend and accomplice, Mohammed Bashir, who's been jailed over a separate plot. Iran says that it considers RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire a legitimate target after the US used the base for bombing raids. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has issued a statement condemning Britain for supporting America's war effort. And a drought has been declared in North Wales and the Upper Severn. It's the first part of the UK to confirm that status this summer. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 77 points at 10,639. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather. Showers in western and far northern Scotland tonight. Dry with long clear spells elsewhere. Lows of 11 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's Thursday's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. It's 8:03. On our panel today, to my left, Tony Earnshaw, founder and chief executive of UK Commercial Group, a cleaning and facilities management company based in the North East. Andy Preston, political commentator. He's a former independent mayor of Middlesbrough and deputy mayor of the Tees Valley. To my right, Bel Ribeiro-Addy, Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill. And next to her, making his debut on the programme, Shihab Khan, political editor of Zateo Mateo UK, which is a new media organisation established by the British-American journalist and commentator Mehdi Hassan. So we'll take your questions. Very easy to get in touch. 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number. You can text 84850, and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Let's take a WhatsApp question first from Christian in Crawley. Is Andy Burnham just engaging in populist short-termism, which will ultimately create more problems than it solves? And I suppose that's a reference to what we've been talking about in the last hour, about pausing the early release for prisoners scheme, cutting bus fares and one or two other things. I mean, quite eye-catching announcements that he's made in his first 3 days as Prime Minister. But is he going to regret some of them? Bel Ribera Addy.
No, I don't think he is. For me personally, I think now we actually sound like a Labour government. And I think he's responding to one of the most crucial things in our time is the cost of living crisis. It has got so bad. I know it's something that's been talked about on your show quite a bit. I mean, £2 bus fares, the cutting of...
Good Tory policy there.
Anything that is going to alleviate the cost of living is extremely important. I think Andy Burnham has understood that, which is why he's come out a swing with things. And like I said, this sounds like a Labour government, a government that wants to put money back into the pockets of working people. We have seen the worst levels of not just poverty, but in-work poverty, about 1 in 3 children living in poverty generally. So things like this are so crucial. I don't think they're populist, I think they're essential.
But I think what Christian is referring to is that this announcement on buses was clearly made with very little idea of where the money was going to come from to pay for it. Darren Jones, who was a key ally, Keir Starmer, helpfully pointed that out to Andy Burnham. Not sure how that went down particularly well, but it was true.
Do you know what always gets me about when policies are announced that are clearly about very key social interventions that are going to make people's lives better? We instantly start nitpicking at them. He's made the announcement.
Well, it's not nitpicking to ask where the money's coming from.
He's going to find the money. If we were going to war, no one would ask where the money was coming from. When we're spending money on fighter jets and things such as that, and again, this isn't an anti-defence argument, I'm sure we might get onto that at some point, we never ask where the money's coming from. But when we're alleviating poverty, it seems to be something that we pick at too much. There are a number of ways to do it. He has announced some of them. I think there was scrapping the ID cards. I think we might be looking at wealth taxes. Well, I don't know that for sure. I hope we're looking at a wealth tax. Things such as that. There are a number of ways to generate the revenue that we need for this to work. But I think the most important thing is understanding that it needs to happen.
Andy Preston.
Yes, he is trying desperately to be popular, but you know what?
Is that a bad thing for a politician?
No, it's not, and I'm not going to sit here and slag someone off just because they're a Labour politician. I think Andy Burnham's part of his job is to be popular. If you're not popular, you're out of a job. Look at Boris Johnson, incredibly popular. Everybody rallied around him, from the public into Parliament as well. As soon as the public turned on him, his politicians, his MPs turned on him. Same thing happened with Starmer. So you have to be popular. But yes, they are relatively vacuous, relatively empty. They're little trinkets, shiny little things that create a good headline. We shouldn't ignore what he's saying, but we've got to judge him really on 3, 9, 18 months, how he's doing. Growth is what he's got to go for. These things are nice, but growth is what he's got to go for. And it's what, Ian, he's going to be judged on.
Tony.
I've been a Conservative voter since the age of 18, and in the last election I actually voted Labour for the first time, and I was very disappointed with what Keir Starmer did for business, for the economy, and for the day-to-day average person. Andy Burnham's came in. I'm hoping he's a bit of a right-leaning socialist. But he's made some good announcements. He's created a bit of a buzz.
Right-leaning socialist, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping he's going to do... He needs to do things for the economy, for business, for growth. It can't just be all tax like we've had the previous, past 5 years. But I think I'm going to give him a chance. I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that he's going to not just tax, and he's going to actually look at growth and bring in money from outside of the country. We need to be open for business. If you were walking down the high street and you've seen a sale in the high street, you would go into that shop. We need to put our plaque out and say, Britain is open for business.
But all chancellors say that, and then they do things which indicate that the opposite is true.
They do, but like I said, we've got to give them a chance. But we can do. There's things we can do. We can lower corporation tax back to 19%, which would attract other businesses. We can do things like help being speaking about pubs today. We can put the VAT down to 10%. We can make the country more attractive for business owners to come into this country and actually want to do business rather than do the opposite. And a lot of them have been leaving.
Now, Shihab, you've been following politics very closely. You were at ITM before you joined Zateo. What do you make of the last 3 days? And do you think that Andy Burnham is guilty, as Christian suggests, of engaging in populist short-termism, or do you think that, no, this is going to pay off in the long term?
Yeah, I think there is an element of short-termism, but there almost has to be. We've got to a point as a country where we don't really give politicians much time. We want to see positive impacts more or less immediately. Andy Burnham has come in, and if he hadn't announced anything in the first 3 days, we'd all be sitting here saying, what's he doing? He's had ages to plan to be Prime Minister. He's been plotting for months and months and months. Why is he not doing anything? So I'm not surprised we're seeing these policies. I'm also not surprised that we're seeing policies that are just supposed to be entirely positive. Who is going to complain about bus fares being capped at £2? It's like that Thick of It sketch where they're in the back of the car and they're saying, what can I say that everyone's going to love and it's cheap and it's free? You expect a Prime Minister to come in and do that because he needs to win people over. He hasn't faced a general election. This is tough. There is a wider question that I think needs to be answered, and it is, how do we pay for all this stuff? I know Bell said we never ask it when it comes to defence. That is true. I don't think we do question it when it comes to defence. But the simple reality is, and politicians from both sides have not been honest about this, is there is not much appetite to raise taxes. There is not much more appetite to cut public services. So where is the money coming from? The answer, I think, is economic growth. Yeah. But how do you stimulate economic growth that is fair, that alleviates poverty, and then make sure those who are suffering most and struggling with the cost of living crisis are actually able to get through? I think these policies are a good start to begin with, but look, we can't judge him for another year or so. I think.
In a sense, we're going back to the old right versus left arguments about, well, lower taxes or higher taxes, less regulation, more regulation, smaller state, bigger state. I mean, politics doesn't actually change in the end, does it? These are all the arguments that have been going on all my adult life.
Yeah, that's why people are so fed up, right? That's why people keep saying politicians are no different to each other. We've been having the same arguments for 10, 15, 20 years, but we've got to a point where the economy hasn't grown, particularly for a decade or more. People don't feel as though their lives are getting better in any sort of meaningful way. I think people are crying out for a politician who can come and answer some of their personal grievances, whether it means improving the NHS, whether it means making their day-to-day life a lot better. I don't think people really care what side of the political spectrum they sit on.
I don't do a lot of travelling at the moment, but I just wonder whether all of these debates are happening in most other developed countries at the moment, sort of the conflict between higher public spending, higher taxes and all the rest of it. I don't know how much you
well, I travel quite a lot. I mean, only recently before the war started, I was in Dubai. And as you know, Dubai has some of the lowest taxes in the world. When you go over there, the infrastructure, the investment that you see is unbelievable. And now I'm not saying, look, we need to have the same tax regime as Dubai, but I feel like we're being taxed enough. I think there needs to be a balance, and the growth is the only way to do it. And we need, like I said before, we need to attract these people. We lost 16,500 millionaires in 2025. These are business owners. These are people like myself who are employing people. When you employ people, we create more tax. We're paying corporation tax. People are paying national insurance, which is very high at the moment. We all know this. It stopped me from hiring extra staff. We normally grow around about 10-15% a year. We haven't grown as much
in terms of the numbers you employ.
In terms of numbers we employ, we haven't been able to do that because it's just so expensive to employ people now. I do other things other than the facilities management company that I own. I'm busy building a small hotel at Newcastle Airport, and actually at the moment I'm worried about taking on staff, so I'm making everything digital and making everything seamless, where you would come, you would check in yourself, you would use
Tony. No, this is a bad move.
This is going to save me a fortune on national insurance.
These machines never work.
Oh, this new technology, AI, new technology, it works like a dream, so we'll see.
Just outing myself as a regular Premier Inn customer. Right, let's go to a break because I want to give the next subject enough time to have a good airing. It's coming up to 15 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Honestly,
I've been putting MTD off. First it was, I'll do it after this job. Then, after some grouting. After sorting the back of the van. After fish fingers and peas. And then I thought, no, just get it done.
Get MTD done simply with Sage for free. Just connect to your bank, we'll sort your transactions, then submit your update to HMRC. Search Sage MTD.
When your husband's got his heart set on making the doer upper open plan, enjoy every thudding second of it.
Yes!
Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our exclusive mortgage rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply. All mortgages are subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply. New Barclays mortgage applications only.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
It's 8:15. We've been having a very animated discussion about the prospect of checking into Tony's hotel.
These are all welcome. I'll even give you 20% discount.
Well, bribery and corruption now. Belle Ribeiro Addy is here, Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill. Andy Preston, political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough and deputy mayor of the Tees Valley. Tony Earnshaw, founder and chief executive of UK Commercial Group. And Shahab Khan, who's political editor of Zateo UK. I have pronounced that right, haven't I?
You have indeed, yes.
Thank goodness, because we were on a podcast the other day, weren't we, together, and you explained how to pronounce it, and then the presenter pronounced it a completely different way. Right, let's go to David, who is in Guildford. David, hello, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Iain. You already raised something which I want to talk about, which is the idea of fining people instead of sending them to prison. I've been boring my friends for decades about people like Jeffrey Archer. It's absolutely bonkers. I did enjoy his book, by the way, which he made millions of.
Oh, his prison diaries. Everyone should read them.
Yeah, they should. But you shouldn't be allowed to keep the money from it. Anyway, I want to take something more serious, because he's not likely to be a violent man, that sort of person, is he? But let's take somebody, for example, who kills someone by drunk driving. Now, that's a terrible offence. But if he's got no other reason to go to prison, don't bother to send him. But what
you wouldn't send someone to prison if they've been convicted of killing someone when they're drunk. Really?
No, I wouldn't, because I would look at his finances, look at his record. I mean, if he's been drunk driving before, that's another matter. But I would take away his driving licence, take away his passport for 5 years, and fine him a very, very large portion of his assets. And that money could go in, if you like, into the prison service.
Okay. But what if one of your family is a victim of a drunk driver? I think they wouldn't agree with you. They'd want somebody in those circumstances to go to prison. But what's your question, David?
Well, that is my question. Why shouldn't judges have much more room to sentence people in accordance with their finances and the risk they're giving to the public?
Okay. Shihab.
Look, I think we'd get into a scenario where people who aren't particularly well off are more likely to go to prison simply because of the assets that they have. So I'm not entirely sure how that would work, because if you had someone who committed a crime like that and they didn't own property or they didn't have a lot of money, I'm not sure how a judge could possibly fine them if they didn't have anything. They would go to prison. If you had someone who had a lot of money and you could fine them, then they wouldn't go to prison. I think that would create a bizarre system. I think the wider issue about our justice system does need to be talked about in a lot more detail. There was a lot of criticism of the last government when they went for the early release scheme. At the time, the then Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood was very critical of the previous Conservative government, saying that they had pushed the prison service to a point of collapse. I, in my previous role, interviewed Lord Timpson, who was the prisons minister. I was very impressed by his work when he was prison minister. I thought the work he was doing about rehabilitation, trying to stop people from reoffending, was very good. I was disappointed to see that he wouldn't be carrying on in that role.
Well, he resigned, saying that he'd done all he could, and I'm thinking, really?
Yeah, so and obviously I don't know the background, I don't know why he decided to do that, but as someone who has genuine expertise, considering how many prisoners or ex-prisoners he had hired, when I spoke to him, there was a lot of focus on, if we reduce the number of people who reoffend and end up in prison, we would actually free up a lot of prison space. And that, to me, felt like a good avenue to explore. I hope the new government does that. I'm disappointed to see Lord Simpson isn't doing that.
But the thing is, we've been having these discussions for more than a decade, and with successive. I mean, I remember when Michael Gove was Justice Secretary, I think Rory Stewart was Prisons Minister, and he had some interesting ideas about all of this sort of thing. And then he gets shunted off somewhere else, and another one comes in, and that's exactly what we've got now, yet another Prisons Minister.
We don't invest in it. That's the issue. We don't invest in that rehabilitation, so we always end up in the same position. I think that's what's causing most of the issues. If we're not going to go to the core of why people reoffend and look at the issues with mental health and look at all of those other things, of course nothing's going to change. We spend more on private companies like Serco managing our prison system, and I'm failing badly at it. They're doing things like getting people to court late and all of those things, which are causing a huge amount of problems. So yeah, it's investment.
Well, I had a brainwave in the last hour, which I wasn't sure it was a very clever idea as the words came out of my mouth, but let me put this to you. What about making it conditional for a prisoner to be released to be able to read, write and count? Because it seems to me that's part of the reason why so many people reoffend, because, I mean, they're not going to get a job. So if they're not going to get a job, they don't have any income. Yes, they might have some benefits, but they're still going to be scrabbling around for money. So in terms of burglaries, and I would have thought that might be something that if you say to people, look, we will help you here, we will educate you, but it's got to work both ways.
I went for a tour of a prison with Lord Simpson before I did that interview, and one of the things I was most impressed by is they had a train track that was placed in the prison garden or sort of outside area, and they were training prisoners on how to fix railroads. And the idea was you would then get a qualification at the end of it, and you could then apply for a job at National Rail, and you would go fix train tracks. And then we spoke to loads of these prisoners who had been, convicted for various different reasons, who said, look, we didn't have much education, we couldn't read, write, all these skills that we didn't have, we've now learned those. Now I've got an incentive to try and get a job and not come back inside. So I think you're right. I think education in prison is a huge win. I think the biggest challenge, and it speaks to the previous question of short-termism and long-termism, Andy Burnham is not going to be able to fix this in one day. New prison places are not going to magically appear because we simply don't have them. He's not going to be able to build a new prison in the first 3 or 4 days in office. So we need to have a long-term plan of how we fix the justice system, because, look, there's a backlog in the courts. There's not enough spaces in our prisons. People are reoffending. It's an absolute mess. And if we don't have a long-term plan on this, it's just going to get worse.
Okay. Tony?
My good lady who I live with is a police officer. I'm very proud of her. She goes out every day and she works on the front line, a bit like PC Harper did. And morale must be so low when you're working day in and day out and arresting people, and you can't go to prison because there's no spaces. But I disagree with what you said. I think there is things we can do now. So prisons have categories. They have category A, B, C and D. Category A and B being the toughest of prisoners and some of the worst crimes, and C and D. D's a bit more flexible. You can actually go to work from a Cat D prison. What we could do is, there's lots of care home and nursing homes in this country that are completely empty. They've closed down. We could be reforming them and rebuilding them and repurposing them as Category D prisons. And prisoners do need to have some sort of hope. They do need to have an education. They do need to have a job. But as a society, we need to help them do that. If we're just putting them in prison and then leave them there to rot and not giving them no support when they come out, they're just going to reoffend again. I think that's one of the things we do. Also, in our prisons, I think we have over 11,000 non-UK nationals in there, and overseas we have about 1,800. As far as I'm concerned, these should be deported from the country. They shouldn't be in our prisons, and we shouldn't be paying for it. That would free up at least 10,000 spaces, which we could have almost next week. That's my...
Well, presumably, if it was that simple to deport them, they would have been deported already, you'd like to think.
well, I'm not saying it's simple, but it's definitely something we can do. And if Andy Burnham wants to make a real impact on creating prison spaces, he needs to think outside of the box. He's put a pause on people leaving early. People being released from prison isn't a new thing. It's been going for 20, 30 years. It's what you get as a prisoner as a reward if you behave. But if he's putting a pause on that, we're just going to be back to the 97%, I think, full at the moment. They'll be back to 99, 100% full. And then we're in a position where people like my partner will go on to arrest somebody and they can't put them in prison. Yeah. Then what do we do?
And that will happen by November, I read.
By November, exactly. So we need to do things now. So the deporting the non-UK nationals is one thing we can do. And the Category D prisons, where if you're Category A and B, you should never get an early release. I agree with that. But if you get moved down categories because of good behaviour, because of education, because of retraining, if you can get into a Cat D prison and you can get someone to employ you, you're much less likely to reoffend.
Andy?
Rehabilitation is really important. So I know about these things. I set up a charity restaurant that employed ex-offenders. I've done that and other things. And work very closely with sometimes very serious offenders and sometimes less so. And what's really clear is that prison's meant to do 4 things. It's meant to get someone who's a problem off the streets. It's meant to deter them from doing it again and deter others. It's meant to show society there's justice. But the last thing is at least as important as the others, maybe more so. It really should give them the chance to reform and build a positive life, because we all benefit from that. And that's where we fail. People come out of prison and cause mayhem and go in and out. I'm not someone who wants to be soft on crime, and I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't work, it causes chaos. The shoplifting crisis, and it is a crisis that we have, and it's been building up for 20 years now.
That's crazy.
Categorically only comes from the softening of the sentencing and the police's lack of interest in dealing with it, or the lack of resources. If you are tough on shoplifting, people stop shoplifting. If you are tough on violence, people decrease their violent activities. So whether it's drunk driving, shoplifting, violence, we do need to put people in prisons. The last thing I'll say is that we can fix this. We all remember the Nightingale hospitals. We don't even need to do anything of that scale, how quickly they can be done. We've got empty office buildings, there could be care homes. There are still lots of people in prison who are low-risk offenders who don't need to be in high-security jails. Why on earth we are keeping them in, but at the same time releasing people early who have raped, committed horrendous violence, serial offenders? It's madness. We can fix this, but nobody wants to. And it partly comes in from what you said. We had something like 15 prisons ministers in 14 years. It's insane. It takes 6 months when you get a new job to work out where you park your car and where the coffee machine is. You can't start running prisons. It's insane.
The prison population in the early 1990s was about 44,000. It's double that now. Michael Howard was famous for saying prison works. Well, for some people it clearly does. But, Belle, do you think that Andy's got a point here? That if they... I mean, I don't know how many people are in prison for relatively minor, non-violent offences. But if Andy Burnham said, right, actually, we're going to release all of those now, because we need to free up the places for longer sentences for violent criminals, I think the electorate would buy that, wouldn't they? I mean, not just release them, but find alternative ways of punishing them.
No, I think they would. And I think if we had a stronger probation service, if we had more investment in that, things like that would be easier. And I'm all for the education and training. We've got a prison in my constituency, Brixton Prison, where they have a fantastic restaurant. You should all go there, the Clink. It's a great restaurant. They train, and they've actually had Michelin star chefs come from there. It's a great place. And obviously these opportunities that have been given to prisoners that wouldn't have otherwise been if there wasn't investment in that type of thing. Those who have committed violent and sexual crime should never have been released early. That's absolutely the case. But I think we need to look at the social interventions more. I think about those Nordic countries that are now closing their prisons because they don't have enough offenders to put in them.
The police need more powers as well, don't they? Because the police need to be able to be tougher on crime as well. At the moment, they're scared sometimes to act on and to what to do or what to say to some people. They should be able to. If, for instance, you go to Spain, if you commit a crime over there, they take within seconds they put the baton out, and people fear them. And I feel like the police need a little bit of fear behind them.
I think people do fear the police. To be honest, I'm not sure about that.
Are you sure that your partner would agree with that kind of approach? I think most police officers I know certainly wouldn't want that kind of approach to policing in this country.
As a society, police, I know for a fact, are scared to do certain things because they come under scrutiny, because they can be criticised themselves for it, and if something goes wrong...
Everybody who is in any form of employment is under scrutiny and can be criticised for what they do. Why should police officers be any different?
I think they should be, but because they need to be able to do their job. They need the tools and they need to have the support from their colleagues in hierarchy to be able to do that. And the police in this country has gone soft. Like I said, you go to Spain, you go to Germany. You wouldn't dare go on shoplifting in these countries.
I think you've hit on something really interesting there. Of course the police should be scrutinised, but the default position should be we back them. Not they've done something wrong. The default position should be we back the police. Let's look into it, and if something bad has happened, there'll be a punishment. But too often from politicians who want to curry favour with certain groups, they immediately launch into the police, and it makes doing that job incredibly difficult.
I wouldn't necessarily agree. We are meant to have a proud tradition in this country of policing by consent. You've got to do it with the communities, not necessarily against the communities.
Whenever
the police are criticised, there's this idea that they either don't have enough powers or people are speaking up against them. Anyone who's in a certain position of power should face.
As soon as there's an incident, certain sections of society and politics pile onto the police and accuse them of all sorts. And it's wrong. It puts them on the back foot.
Sometimes, rightly so. Look at this case in Greater Manchester today, where they've had to apologise because they didn't look at the phone of this guy, and if they had, the synagogue attack might have been prevented.
They make mistakes and they should be punished. But the default position should not be to pile on. But that's why they have to be
scrutinised.
I agree entirely.
I'm not saying don't scrutinise them.
Should not be to pile on.
But you did say that, actually.
Well, I didn't, because what I'm saying is that they need more power, they need our backing as police officers, and I'm saying that these criminals who are going out need to fear the police in some ways and actually think, do you know what, I don't want to commit this crime. Shoplifting, for instance. Most of the time now, if you get caught shoplifting...
You're talking to a convicted shoplifter when I was 14.
But you get a fine now. You don't get arrested for it. It's very rare you get arrested for shoplifting these days.
The shoplifting situation is very, very sad. But we have to realize there are some instances in where people are shoplifting because they are broke. And I think there should be certain difference. So, for example, Liverpool Council have got a scheme where if you shoplift, and you're shoplifting essential items, they will refer you to a food bank like baby food and things such as that. Obviously, if you're shoplifting other things like a bottle of wine, they take a harsher stance.
So it's okay to wander into Tesco's and steal food?
No, it's not that. I mean, I think they again, we have these rules where you've said quite rightfully you're not always going to face a tough sentence for shoplifting. So they are trying to put a bit more of a social spin, a bit more of an intervention on it to stop people from doing those things where people are doing it because they feel that they have no other way other than just, wanting to steal for the sake of stealing.
Security guards at Tesco, at Asda, they have literally...
They might as well not be there.
They might as well be. They've got no powers whatsoever. When the police get there, they know if they arrest them, nothing's going to be done. So the criminals know this and they think, well, actually, I'm just going to walk into Tesco and I'm going to go on a supermarket sweep. I'm going to fill my trolley and out I go.
I don't see, but people are shoplifting in my area to order. They're going into Clapham and they're literally taking... No, that absolutely needs to stop.
How do we do that?
I think the first thing we need to do is, you said, there does need to be greater accountability when you do that. So actually, as you said, people like putting things into their basket. There's a certain value, I think, over which people don't bother to report it because it's an insurance.
That shouldn't be the case. We shouldn't be in that situation.
I agree. That shouldn't be the case. And when shop workers actually get put in these situations, I think they definitely need more support.
Yes, and then they're the ones that get sacked for intervening if they do decide to intervene.
Yeah, absolutely.
I talked to someone a couple of months ago.
But I'm not sure if greater sentencing necessarily is going to make a difference. They should absolutely be caught and stopped. Okay. But we need to stop people selling on these items.
Corey is reminding me of the time.
Sorry.
It's 8:33. News headlines on LBC with Daryl Jackson.
The Prime Minister has said no prisoners will be let out as he announced a pause on the early release scheme. It was due to take effect from September in efforts to tackle overcrowding in jails in England and Wales. A teenage girl and a woman in her 40s who died off the coast of Essex yesterday were a mother and daughter from London. Police believe they were trying to help a 7-year-old boy who got into difficulty, who's now in a critical condition in hospital. And Iran says that it considers RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire a legitimate target after the US used the base for bombing raids. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has issued a statement condemning Britain for supporting America's war effort. LBC weather: showers in western and far northern Scotland tonight, dry with long clear spells elsewhere, lows of 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip. Do more this summer. Hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
You know that feeling when you're out, something cool happens and you just have to capture it. The new Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 gets it. Thanks to its new wide design, content looks and feels so much better. Unfold it for a massive cinematic screen. Close it for perfect reels on the go. No cropping, no missing bits. Just content exactly as it was meant to be seen. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 on EE for only £54 per month, increasing to £56.50 March 2027 and £59 March 2028. Airtime plan and 48-month device credit agreement required. Subject to status, 18+. Credit provided by EE Limited.
Ever get giddy renewing your car insurance? Fantasize about finance offers or paying your service bill? Probably not. After all, the best bit about driving a BMW is driving it. So leave the admin and skip to the best bit. Choose a new BMW 1 Series or 2 Series Grand Coupe by the 30th of September to enjoy a year's insurance, 3 years servicing, plus 2.9% APR representative. Search BMW, skip to the best bit. BMW UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. BMW Finance T's and C's apply. Insurance age restrictions and exclusions apply. Whew, that's the admin over with.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:35 on LBC. If you just tuned in, let me reintroduce our panel. Belle Ribeiro Addy is Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton. Andy Preston, political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough and deputy mayor of the Tees Valley. Tony Earnshaw, founder and chief executive of UK Commercial Group. And Shiab Khan, political editor of Zateo UK. Andrew has a text question. He says, today Andy Burnham made a policy announcement about business rates for pubs and clubs to cut their costs and give them confidence to trade. Given the last Chancellor effectively stalled the economy for a few months prior to the last autumn budget, and media speculation was rife about that budget, does the panel think that Andy Burnham should announce his budget plans for the wider business community much sooner to hopefully give them trading and investment confidence too? Andy.
Business needs confidence. That's a cliche. And the reason it's used so much is that it's really true. The businesses and the whole economy works on confidence, whether you're talking about the bond market traders in the USA or someone that's running a little boutique shop somewhere in middle of England. So whenever somebody new comes in, especially when they haven't really said very much about what they believe, and Andy Burnham has basically said what everybody wanted to hear, and understandably he's trotting out lines that everybody wants to hear. I don't think anybody has any idea what he wants to do, what he really believes in. He's been, as we know, a Blairite, a Corbynite, a Brownite. We don't know who the real Andy Burnham is. Maybe he's going to be a beautiful mixture of all of them.
But...
Well, I think he went along with almost everything. He said he rose through the ranks and became the front runner for this job that he's just won by saying left-wing, very left-wing things, just like Keir Starmer did. And they do that. That's what they do within Labour. They try and win the favour of the activists and the members and the backbench MPs. And as soon as they get into power, they pivot somewhat.
Do that too. I'd cite Liz Truss.
Politicians do that. My point is that I think that he's got to come forward with some real stuff. Keir Starmer got in, and Rachel Reeves, having said nothing, and then dragged out saying nothing for as long as they could, and it caused mayhem. So I think Burnham's got to come forward soon. I don't know if you people are watching. I know about these things. I used to be a hedge fund manager.
You know how to make yourself popular, don't you?
Well, luckily, I'm not in the popularity business, but luckily. But around the world, government interest rates are climbing, and people listening and watching might think, well, what do I care? You should care. Every time the UK government interest rates go up by about 1%, 100 basis points, it's going to cost about £30 billion a year, every single year forever. Unless something fundamentally changes. It's monstrous. The tinkering about we've seen today is nothing. We are probably 5 steps down a 10-step line to some kind of bond market meltdown, which would We have no idea what could come. I promise you,
I think that's a bit extreme.
We think times are tough. You have no idea. Look at what happened to Greece. That they were bailed out about 15 years ago.
I remember.
If you don't know what happened there, let me spell it out. Hospital budgets were slashed by about 35%. Prescriptions, everybody suddenly had to pay for them. Schools' budgets fell by about 35%. Roads went completely unmended. Now, I'm not predicting it will happen, and it certainly won't happen in 1 or 2 years, but we're on a journey towards that with some other countries, and we are 5 steps there. We need a concrete plan to cut spending. And I get the point about raising taxes. I totally understand it. The problem is raising taxes solves a problem in the short term, but knackers the economy.
But you said you want growth. So how are you going to get growth if you don't invest?
Well, taking money from here and putting it there, from one part of the economy, putting it in another, isn't really investing. What we need to do is make savings. That's investing.
Cutting our public services has never helped the economy. It just hasn't. It just hasn't.
Okay. We are spending too much money. People will quite rightly point out, and they do, they say that right now our welfare bill has been as high as it is now in the past. And it has. But do you know when that was? That was when we had massive crises, unemployment crises, financial meltdowns. If we get either of those again, even in a small way, we are absolutely knackered. And you have to watch and see what happens to a government when their government debt goes up 200, 300, 400 basis points. All bets are off, completely off now. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I'm not predicting it tomorrow.
But the point is,
we're on the road to that happening.
If you dramatically cut public spending, which it sounds as if that's what you want to do, how does that create economic growth when you're taking tens of billions of pounds out of the economy?
Yeah.
Well, you don't take it out of the economy, of course. It stays in the economy. And I'm not suggesting massive increases in spending. What I would suggest is actually freezing in real terms, or perhaps slightly reduce in real terms, some areas of spending. If we do not do that and we hit a crisis, we are out, completely out.
I mean, to the question, which was specifically about whether or not we should go for that. I actually one of the things I did today was open the new Elephant and Barrel pub in my constituency, and it was very, very nice to actually go somewhere as a Labourer, and people be happy to see me. And they were happy.
I thought you were a bit tipsy.
I didn't. I had a 0%
That was a joke,
cider.
by the way.
I had a 0% cider. It was very nice. And they had this great mechanical elephant outside, which has been shipped in from Kerala. Do go and have a look. If you pull on it, the elephant trunk goes up. But they were very happy about the business rate cuts, and they want to see more. I mean, one of the things that we have that is issued, we have some of the highest VAT. No, we have the highest VAT in Europe.
No, we don't.
Don't we?
No.
Who's higher than us?
There are other countries that have over 20%.
Well, we're close enough comparatively.
Chris and Corey can fact check that for me, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Okay, there may be one or two, but compared to a large majority of Europe, our VAT is really, really high. And that's one thing that businesses have complained about. But in terms of cutting public spending, I am firmly against that. Efficiencies, yes. I think there are a number of departments that we can look at in terms of being more efficient. In terms of, again, looking at where we're spending money, again, private sector contractors who are essentially wasting our funds and not delivering certain services, but cutting public spending, cutting these things has never helped the economy.
Why should the pub sector be singled out here for help? Because there are plenty other areas of the economy that would think, well, we have an equal claim to help from the government.
I'm not saying the pub sector should be singled out. I think it's just one announcement.
But Andy Burnham has done that today.
Yeah, he has done it today. And he's going to make announcements on different sectors in different ways, no doubt, across his time. It is only day 3, 4? We're Thursday, day 4. Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, even I'm giving him a chance. You know what I can be like.
I know what you can be like, Belle.
You know what I can be like. So give him a chance to lay out. And one of the other specifics of the question was whether or not he should fast track the budget. Absolutely not. Loads of people are already trying to argue about how is he going to find the money. You've got to give him time to find all of this money and lay it out to the public in a way that makes sense to them. And he shouldn't be doing it any faster than, our autumn budget, which is coming up soon.
Well, I think you're right about business confidence. We saw before, and we see it before every single budget, that businesses wait to find out what's actually going to be in it before they make any big major decisions. I don't think that the Andy Burnham government is ready to do a very quick budget. I'd be very surprised if they've done all the work you need to do beforehand for that to happen. I'm guessing that we're going to have a lot of leaks and a lot of suggestive policies that get played out in the media from now through till October.
Well, see, that's interesting because over the past couple of months, Burnham's leadership campaign and all the people around him, they have not leaked, which is very frustrating to the likes of you and me.
Yeah, very frustrating. But this is very different, and that is true, and it's partly why we don't know what Andy Burnham really believes, and we don't really know what the Andy Burnham government looks like.
Why do you think they would leak budgets?
Because this is very different. What often happens in the lead up to a budget is that policies are tested, and policies are leaked very cleverly to members of the media a month and a half before, to sense what business reaction is, and often things change very quickly. And I think there's going to be a lot of that coming up to September, because what happens is something gets leaked, the government says, we don't respond to leaks, we don't confirm or deny it, and then it ends up in the budget, or it doesn't end up in the budget, based off of how businesses respond. There'll be a lot of that from now up until the autumn budget. I think the big thing that we are kind of all ignoring is, firstly, we've had austerity very recently under the Conservative government. Cabinet ministers were told very recently under Rachel Reeves to go through line-by-line spending in each government department and to define and justify every single line. Anything that was viewed as excessive spending, they were told to cut. I don't think there is that much room to move. On top of that, we are completely discounting what is going on in the Middle East. We are discounting there could be an escalation with Iran. We've already heard from the Houthis about them potentially blockading another strait, which would impact oil supplies. If we get into that scenario, that will blow every single domestic policy agenda out of the water. The cost of living crisis will go through the roof. All of these little bits of £2 bus fares, none of that will matter, because all of us are going to get hit by a cost of living crisis that we've not seen before. So sadly, I think a lot of this is going to be dictated about what happens with foreign policy.
Tony?
Well, the reason we don't know anything about Andy Burnham's policies is because there was no leadership contest. He basically got the job through the back door, I would argue. Had we have had that, we would actually know what he was going to produce for the country. But business needs incentives. Every business needs some sort of incentive. And business leaders need incentives. For instance, we've got the new Universal Studios getting opened just further north from here. They had a lot of incentives over the years to be able to get that off the ground, and that's going to create billions of pounds in infrastructure, in jobs, in tourism.
There must be something about the UK that's still attractive, because all these AI companies, all these tech companies are still coming in and setting up shop in London.
Yeah, listen, I love the UK. I think it's the best place to do business, but what we can't have is any more taxes. We've had so much. We've already done that bit. We've taxed. I agree. We shouldn't have any more austerity. I think cutting public services, unfortunately, would be a negative. They're already on the knees. The police have just managed to get back and the numbers they need of the NHS. It's got waiting lists through the roof. It doesn't work. The taxes have been done. And actually, when we went through the last budget, we were told that there would be surplus money after the last tax hike. So Andy needs to find new ideas. He needs to find incentives for business, and he needs to, I'll say it again, he needs to bring in money from outside the country in, because we're circulating the same money round and round and round.
But those millionaires that want to be taxed.
Well,
they can pay tax.
They can go online and pay that.
They can there's a treasury account that they can put money in.
We're talking about 0.04% of the population. 0.04% of population would, if we put that wealth tax on that people are talking about, on 2% for money over 10 million.
If you put 2%, so for instance, if you have an asset worth £100 million and you put 2% tax on that, okay, that's £2 million. Okay, you have to find that. Now, these business owners, we don't have liquid £2 million lying around. Now, to get that money out, I need to either sell my property or I need to draw it down for my business. Now, if I draw that money down for my business, I've already paid 25% corporation tax on it. Then I'm paying nearly 40% dividend tax on it.
No, but we're talking about excess wealth. I don't think we're talking about assets here.
It's assets. Yeah. It's everything. It takes everything.
We need to, unfortunately, finish this discussion, but not before I point out that I was right, Belle, on VAT.
You were? Okay, go on.
The UK has the joint 23rd highest VAT in Europe. Hungary's is 27%, making it the highest. Perhaps unsurprisingly, all the Scandinavian countries are the next highest.
It's not great, though, is it?
I win.
Okay, you win.
I've got to take my victories where I can.
Take your victory, but don't you think we should reduce it?
Reduce VAT?
Yeah.
I'd love to reduce
tax would you
VAT.
put on? If you cut VAT, you've got to put another tax up.
No, that's a whole other debate, which we're not going to get into because we need to go to a break. It's 8:48.
This is LBC.
Tony, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Scott has called from Glasgow. Hi, Scott.
Jane's in Camden first. Hi, Jane.
Let us make this the moment when Britain starts to believe again. The moment we bring back hope.
Hear every side of the story.
He needs to get directly to the core issues that people are feeling on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of people don't feel hope.
It's disgusting what has happened. He should have shown Keir some respect.
It was a little underwhelming, the feeling of, just another one.
I deplore this kind of walk into the number 10 without a mandate. Really, we should have a general election.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
Honestly, I'd been putting MTD off. First it was, I'll do it after this job. Then, after some grouting. After sorting the back of the van. After fish fingers and peas. And then I thought, no, just get it done.
Get MTD done simply with Sage for free. Just connect to your bank, we'll sort your transactions, then submit your update to HMRC. Search Sage MTD.
The Ford Puma and the all-electric Ford Puma Gen E. Stylish, bold, and as driven as you are. And now, you could win one. Take a test drive in any Ford Puma to enter and be in with a chance of winning either the Ford Puma or all-electric Ford Puma Gen E. Search Win a Ford Puma to book online. Ready, set, Ford. To enter, take a test drive between the 1st of July and the 31st of August. T's and C's apply, 25 plus only. For details, see ford.co.uk.
Goldbank London, a safe and sound way to buy and sell gold.
Start your journey in gold today.
Visit goldbank.co.uk.
Breathe in and stretch into the next spiritual plane. Free your mind, body, and soul. And now, a battered sausage and chips. Namaste.
Unwind with yoga on Brighton Beach this summer. Download the Thameslink Railway app and save with advance tickets. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Don't miss the fight before the fight. Anthony Joshua must survive the here and now.
Huge risk!
I'm back. July 25th, Joshua versus Prenga, live exclusively on DAZN.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 8:51. Belva Barrow Addy, Andy Preston, Tony Earnshaw and Shahab Khan are with us taking your questions. Here's one from Martin in Eastleigh. So now we hear government ministers are going to be regularly working from number 10 North, as well as the Prime Minister. Is this government completely forgetting about the South? Let me add, or the Southwest, or the Midlands, or, dare I say, the North East. Shihab, this, I think, has the potential to go really very wrong when you think we've heard today that Lucy Powell, Angela Rayner and who's the other one? Anyway, another Manchester. Louise Haigh. They're all going to be working predominantly, I think, from number 10 North, all coincidentally Manchester MPs.
I think there's two sides to this. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting idea. We keep talking about he needs to do something different. Things aren't working in the United Kingdom. We need to try something else. I think number 10 in the North potentially works in a way that it could bring jobs and move a lot of the work that we do out of London. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Andy Burnham has obviously had his personal experience of being the mayor of Greater Manchester. He's got a number of frustrations that he has felt when it comes to policy making being too focused on London, it being difficult. I do, however, think there are a few logistical issues with this. What and how does the Prime Minister go back and forth between Manchester and London so frequently? What happens? What's that, sorry?
On the bus.
On the bus, yeah, on the bus.
Without HS2.
Without HS2. I think that's a logistical challenge. There was questions asked, and I asked this question of, does this mean, will we be hosting foreign leaders at number 10 North? Downing Street didn't deny it when I asked it, so maybe that's something that's going to happen. Are we going to have Donald Trump? I mean, Andy Burnham has said he'd love to show Donald Trump Manchester, but are we going to be having foreign leaders going to Manchester at number 10 North? We need a better idea of exactly how this is going to work.
And also, I mean, perish the thought, but say there was an equivalent of Grenfell Tower happen, and Angela Rayner has to make an immediate statement to the House of Commons as Housing Secretary, and she's up in Manchester. I mean, the system, Bell, would be under a bit of pressure, wouldn't it?
It would be under a bit of pressure, but I think perhaps we have to start thinking differently.
And this could fix that, I think.
Yeah, I think
it's sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's actually disappointing that the system would be under pressure. We as a country should be able to do this. The fact that we're talking about how the logistics will work is actually a damning indictment of the country, that we actually can't think about how this is going to work because we don't have the infrastructure in place.
Isn't it a damning indictment of Andy Burnham that he hasn't actually thought this through? He's just made the announcement.
Well, how do we know he hasn't thought it through? You have to remember, during the pandemic, we realised that there were all of these magical things that we could vote from home. We could do Parliament from home. I was Zoomed on a number of occasions into the chamber in Parliament. If Angela Rayner, for example, that was your example you gave, had to make a statement, surely she could be Zoomed in if it was that crucial. We have the technology to do certain things now. I think perhaps we're not thinking of it because we're so used to the old ways of doing it.
Tony?
Well, I would argue that Manchester's south, not necessarily north.
I'm from Brixton, so that's not...
But the north doesn't stop at Manchester, you know. I don't know if you know this. There's actually places further north, like Newcastle, like Middlesbrough, like Scotland as well. But so I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm a champion of the north, and we have the most friendly people up there. We have the best football club.
Which football team do you support?
Newcastle United are definitely the best, and then... Ian likes West Ham, don't you? Doing as well these days. But no, I think it's brilliant.
No thanks to you.
Yeah. But I think it's a fantastic idea. I think we do need to level up the country. I know it's an old saying, but it never really happened last time. HS2 was an absolute... I think HS2 was a fantastic idea. Again, it stopped at Manchester and Leeds, the North East. We got new metro trains we've had the metro trains since the 60s, I think, and we've just got some new trains now. So I think if you're going to incorporate the North, you need to remember that there's more than just Manchester.
Okay. Can I come in? I have to say, forgive me, I think it's a really stupid idea. I think it's going to undo Andy Burnham. First of all, you have to be where your ministers are, where your colleagues are, and where the civil servants are.
You also have to be in front of the microphone.
My apologies. So basically, the reason why working from home for many people and many occupations does not work very well is that you need to be around people. You need to share ideas. You need to know how people feel and what they're really thinking, not what they're saying to you for the sake of it. If you are in the north, away from the head of the civil service, away from your ministerial colleagues and other people, you cannot do your national job. That's the first reason it's a dumb idea. The other one, if it's meant to show solidarity or levelling up, it actually does the opposite. It's exclusive. It excludes the North East. It excludes the Midlands. It excludes East Anglia. It excludes the South West. It's a stupid idea. And by the way, if the Labour government now awards a big contract to a Manchester company when other companies in the country were bidding for it, guess what everyone's going to rightly suspect? This is a stitch-up. There's a pro-Manchester agenda. It's really clear, and you're going to pay the price, Mr. Burnham.
Now, Belle, you'll be very pleased to know that I stated something which was wrong a moment ago, where I said that Louise Haigh was a Manchester MP, but you didn't correct me. She's actually a Sheffield MP. Lucy Powell and Angela Rayner, Lisa Nandy and Jonathan Reynolds are all Greater Manchester MPs. So there are 4 of them, not 3, is there?
That is correct.
Marvellous. Right, let's move on very quickly. This is from Rob in Tottenham. Should Angela Rayner return the severance payment given to her when she lost her job as Housing Secretary? Now she's been given the job of Housing Secretary. Now she's confirmed that she will not repay the £16,876 paid to her when she resigned from Keir Starmer's cabinet in September 2025. She called for Tory ministers to repay theirs during the Truss era. Now, given I'm looking at the clock, we haven't got a lot of time, so 30 seconds from each of you. Andy?
Yes, she should repay it. I'm not against anybody getting rich, but we've got so many MPs who've entered Parliament as normal people, you know, perhaps they have a house with some equity or a little bit of money, and then within 15 years they seem to be worth 5, 10, 15, 30 million quid. It's absolutely baffling and bizarre. They are cashing in, they're making money. It's not illegal, but it's immoral, it's unethical, and it clouds their judgment. We need them to be completely divorced from personal enrichment, and as a symbolic gesture, she needs to repay that money.
Tony?
Yes.
Belle?
Well, she's not going to, is she?
Should she?
Not necessarily, no.
But she called for Tory ministers to do this.
I don't recall her doing that.
Well, she did.
Yeah, she did. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then perhaps. But I think it's neither here nor there, to be honest.
She will repay it, I guarantee.
£17,000?
She's already said
neither here nor there.
She's already said she's not going to.
About 3 days' time, we're hearing the news that she's repaying it.
Okay, sure.
I don't know which Tory minister she said should repay it. If she's talking about Truss cabinet ministers who were in the post for a month, or someone like Suella Braverman who lost her job as Home Secretary and then became Home Secretary quite quickly after, I can see why. I think there's a long enough gap between her being Housing Secretary once and not being Housing Secretary and being out of the cabinet for a severance payment to be fairly reasonable. She may not have known whether she would ever get back into the cabinet. I think it's a wider discussion to be had about whether or not cabinet ministers deserve payouts when they get fired, or when they haven't paid their stamp duty properly, whether they should have severance payments in the first place.
Right, Joe in Leeds says, Andy Burnham says pubs are our heritage and need protecting from financial collapse. But which famous person would you love to go down the pub with, and why? Tony.
Homer Simpson, every day of the week. He has got to be the funniest, most relaxed man. And when you go to the pub, you go there for a good time.
He's not real.
He's not, well, in my land he is.
I want to live wherever you're living.
Yeah, fantastic.
Believe it or not, I would like to stand and have a drink and a chat with Jeremy Corbyn. I agree with almost nothing that he says, but I think he's a really honest, interesting man, and I'd love to chat about the world and see how he sees it.
Belle?
Do they have to be alive?
No.
I mean, he chose Homer Simpson. I don't think so. Do whatever you want.
Michael Jackson. I just have some questions.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have expected that one.
Why? But I mean, yeah. But if you don't, just have some questions. Not sure if he would be the pint
and you
type
wouldn't
of drinker.
stop till you got enough answers, would you? That's why I get paid the big bucks.
I don't drink, so I'm going to switch it to a curry, and I would go with Andy Burnham, and I'd stick a couple of cameras up and I'd film it for Zateo and actually ask him what his plans are for the government.
Just very quickly, I'm ashamed to say that I haven't asked you about Zateo. What is it and when's it starting properly? Because we're in a sort of early phase.
We've soft launched. We're a new independent progressive news outlet. We'll be launching properly in September, where you're going to get podcasts, you're going to get written articles. I'm going to be launching a show come September where we're going to be talking about the week's politics. So there's plenty of stuff for people to look out for in September. And hopefully Andy Burnham will come on and actually speak to us.
They're all doing it, aren't they? Shows about politics. We've started a trend. Well, good luck with it. And thank you all very much for coming on the programme tonight. Monday's panel includes the Green Party Deputy Leader Rachel Millward, the Conservative London Assembly member Tony Devonish, plus the businessman Kieran Fothergill. Now, coming up in the next hour, I want to talk about, well, in fact, I don't really want to talk about this, but for a reason that I will explain. I think this country is still obsessed by class. I thought we got out of this. But Andy Burnham's been at it again today, saying, well, of course, I want to give all this help to the pub sector because the pub is vital for the working classes of this country. Do we really need to be divided into classes anymore in 2026 Britain? I don't think so. But what does it even mean to be working class or middle class in Britain today? Surely we should retire these outdated terms. What do you think? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Andy Burnham has paused the next phase of the early release scheme to tackle overcrowding prisoners. It follows widespread criticism, including from the widow of PC Andrew Harper. Lizzie Harper yesterday said it was deplorable that two of his killers could be freed halfway through their sentences as a result. Tanya Bassett from the Probation Officers Trade Union told LBC their members were only told in the last couple of weeks who was being released.
So they've had a very truncated period of time in order to do the pre-release work. And in some complex cases, and that doesn't necessarily mean risk of harm, you would want up to 2 and 3 months in order to do that in terms of accommodation, etc. What the Prime Minister has done has now paused that and potentially made that even less time for our members to make robust release plans.
Southport killer Aksa Rudakabana has been transferred from prison to a high-security psychiatric hospital. The Ministry of Justice has confirmed he's moved to Broadmoor, but says it does not impact his 52-year minimum sentence. He carried out an attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in July 2024, killing 3 young girls. A mother and her teenage daughter have died after getting into difficulty off the Essex coast. A A 7-year-old boy is still in a critical condition in hospital after emergency services were called to West Mersey. Andy Burnham says pubs need to know the cavalry is coming after announcing a cut to their business rates. They'll be reduced by 20% in England from April. Clubs and live music venues will also be eligible too. Broadcaster and co-owner of the Royal Oak Pub in Swallowcliffe in Wiltshire, James May, told LBC that Andy Burnham could go further.
I'm very much in favour of giving him a chance. I mean, the VAT is the big one. Now, knock that off a bit for things like pubs. The people would rejoice, the pubs would do better, and the national mood would improve, and that would increase productivity and happiness and all these other things.
The price of oil's gone back above $100 a barrel for the first time since May. Donald Trump's threatened major military punishment for Iran after its allies, the Houthis, fired on 2 tankers in the Red Sea. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 77 points at 10,639. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather. Showers in western and far northern Scotland tonight. Dry with long clear spells elsewhere. A low of 11 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
It's 9:05. A very good evening to everyone. We are going to talk about class in this hour. And I do this with a slight degree of trepidation because I think there are some people, depending on what class they think they originate from, who are actually really proud of that label. They're proud to be working class. They're proud to be, well, actually, are people proud to be middle class? I don't know. I remember in my book, I wrote a thing about saying, well, our family are sort of lower middle class. And my sister got really annoyed with me. She said, but we own land, so that makes us upper middle class. And I'm saying, does it really matter? I mean, we all have different definitions of class, don't we? Upper class, I suppose we automatically think of someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who we regard as upper class. I would actually say he's probably upper middle class rather than totally upper class. I think you have to have probably centuries of background of the aristocracy to be legitimately upper class. But why do we even have these expressions in 2026? I can understand why they existed maybe in the 1930s, but not now. And you look at other countries, are they as obsessed by class as we are? I don't think they are. You look at Germany, which is essentially one big middle class with a relatively small underclass, I would say. People are sort of very, very poor, but most people are in the so-called Mittelstand, which effectively does mean middle class. So why are we so obsessed with class in this country? And what does being working class in Britain in the 21st century actually mean? And if you've moved between classes, if you come from a traditionally working class area, working class background, but you now are in a profession or a job which would traditionally not put you in the working class, even though you obviously work, how difficult is that? And when you sort of go home and you meet friends who are still where you grew up, how does that work? Now, part of the reason I'm asking about this is because Andy Burnham has today defended limiting cuts to business rates to certain hospitality ventures, saying that pubs need to know that the cavalry is coming. He said that the 20% being knocked off rates for pubs, clubs and live music venues across England from April next year was a first step to help business. Gambling arcades as well as vape shops will see their business rates relief slashed to raise the £100 million a year to fund the move. Some businesses do real good, he said, as he visited the Hare Pub in Harlow in Essex, which he said sits right in the heart of the community. He said, but other businesses can cause social harm, so adult gaming centres on high streets can often bring real harm to communities. Then people will see the vape shops that often don't add much to the community life and cause other issues too. And he said the changes will see businesses that cause social harm treated differently. They will obviously pay higher rates to give the ability then to cut business rates for pubs and other venues that bring people together and bring wider benefits to high streets and communities. And in his view, I mean, he basically says, well, look, pubs are for the working classes, so that means that they should be preserved. And I really blanched at that, because it's not just so-called working class people that go to pubs. It's ludicrous to say that it's just one sort of person that goes to pubs and therefore they must be preserved for cultural and community reasons. I think there'll be a lot of other parts of the hospitality sector and say, well, hang on a minute, what about us? So his primary motive for this seems to be that, well, these are working class institutions, so therefore they have to be protected above everyone else. I think that's a very strange way of looking at life, don't you? Hashi Mohammed joins us, barrister and broadcaster, who's the author of the book People Like Us, What It Takes to Make It in Modern Britain. Hashi, very good evening to you. What does class mean to you?
Yes, good evening, Iain. Thanks for having me. I think for me, having written a great deal about this issue, class is something that is, I think, uniquely obsessive in a country like the United Kingdom, because it's something that has been present for so long, and it's in our literature, it's in our buildings, it's in the way in which we understand different levels of society. So it's no surprise to me that we are obsessed with it in that particular context differently to other countries. That doesn't necessarily follow, and I slightly disagree with you up to a point, that there isn't a sort of a similar or slightly different version of class systems, even in America, if you would believe it, in a place where sort of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants have a different kind of class to other more recently arrived immigrants. But fundamentally, I think what it comes down to is, if you're working class, what it means today is, are you relying on having to get up every day, work, get a salary every month by means of actually paying your bills and living your life? If you're not part of that, or you are part of that, but also are owner of the means of production, i.e. you run the business, you employ people, you can control how much you earn and so on and so forth, and you're not living sort of paycheck to paycheck, you're slowly going up the ladder. And as you already identified, if you're a landed gentry, or you have family members who are in the professional classes, and now you're in the professional classes, then you go up the scale of what it means to be upper class, and then you get all the way up to the royalty, who are the real gentry for nearly 1,000 years. So for me, that is the basic way of doing it. But lastly, I would also really strongly agree with you. I'm a supporter of Andy Burnham. I'm definitely more of the politics of the centre of left. I'm glad about what he's doing. But I think he's making a really big mistake if he tries to sort of say pubs are getting this break, the bars and nightclubs are getting this break because there are white working class or working class institutions that are there to help people, because that is a real mistake. Everyone benefits when the pubs get some sort of, even people who live in Tunbridge Wells benefit from the pubs getting a break. So what he should really do is do these kind of things, but try and widen your understanding of who benefits in society. Otherwise, what you'll do is you'll entrench this tribalism that we desperately don't need right now.
You see, I think the logic of this, I mean, if you think that the hospitality sector is experiencing hard times, and let's face it, I think we all agree that it is, the wider hospitality sector too.
Yes.
Restaurants are part of that. Now, is he effectively implying by doing this that, well, restaurants, they're for middle-class people, and they're not my sort of people? Well, I mean, bear in mind that Andy Burnham himself now has to be classed himself as middle class.
Exactly. And that's why he didn't need to do that. What he needed to say was, look, when you look at the duty on alcohol, when you look at the fact that you can't smoke in pubs anymore, when you look at the fact that people are much more likely to buy alcohol from the supermarket and go home and drink, when you look at the fact that people's wages have gone down, when you look at all of these things combined, and business rates having gone up and up and up, we have lost an institution that is at the center of our communities, where people would get together, meet up, drown their sorrows, share their war stories, share their pains and good stories. And that kind of environment is what is at the heart of every community. And what I'm doing today is not a hierarchy of a restaurant is better than a pub, but just simply picking one institution to try and level things up a little bit. That's how you should put it, you know?
How easy is it nowadays to move from the so-called working classes to the middle classes, and can you ever go back?
Almost impossible. Some people will say to you that they could be in the middle class, but they still have a mindset of the working class. And some people might say that there is definitely an element of what people call social mobility upwards, but there is also downward social mobility. Be under no illusions that it does exist, that people who might have been born into the middle class might find themselves in the working class or different kind of category. But moving up through the ranks is actually fundamentally really, really difficult. And I'll give you this really simple understanding of that. When you think about relative social mobility, i.e. you relative to your parents and grandparents, that is pretty common for a very minority of people, including me. But when you think about absolute mobility, i.e. a generation of people moving up from working class up to the middle class, we haven't actually seen that since the war. Because when the war happened, so many people died, the pieces of the puzzle are up in the air, that you're building a whole new country and a whole new economy and a whole new system. And by that logic, you're going to create a whole new class of people that are going to go through the ranks. So fundamentally, we have not seen any absolute mobility happening in this country since the Second World War. And insofar as we've seen relative social mobility of people like me, it's actually a small minority of people. And yet we convince ourselves that one day, if I work hard enough and I pass the exams and I get my degree and I do the right thing, I'll get there. When in reality, the structural systems in this country and in many other places function in a way that the tube at the top only lets a certain people through every now and again, but the vast majority of people really stay where they are.
I did an extended interview with you, quite a few months ago now.
Yeah.
We talked about your own background. And I mean, in a sense, you are a living example of somebody who has progressed through sort of our society in a way that I think is a brilliant example to others. But are you saying that, well, just because I've done it, that doesn't mean to say that it's easy for lots of other people to do it, and there are still barriers in their way?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, because when I first started out on my little journey of social mobility, when I think about how much I've progressed just in the last 10 years, I really started out from a place, Iain, of thinking, why hasn't anybody else done this? Why haven't more people tried to do what I've done? And actually now, the more I've reflected and got older and I'm a father and so on, I've realized actually there are so many variables that are in place, and those variables have to fall in place in certain ways in a certain moment in order for you to really break that. And so for me, what I would say is, it is not enough to be working hard. It's not enough to be talented. It's not enough to really want it badly. There are so many other things: your mindset, your genetics, your luck, the moment where you've arrived, the people who've helped you, the mistakes you've learned from, the tragedies you avoided. There are like so many things that are there that can just jolt you one way or another, and therefore decide your destiny forever, such that no matter how hard people try, it isn't just enough to try. That's the point I'm making.
Hashi, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme tonight. Really, really interesting. I'm sure we've provoked quite a few calls coming in. That's Hashi Mohammed there. His book is called People Like Us, What It Takes to Make It in Modern Britain. 0345 6060973. We will come to your calls in just a few minutes' time. Are you as upset by the fact that we still seem to have a thriving class system in this country in 2026, when I thought in the sort of 80s and 90s, early 2000s, that we gradually stopped talking about this subject? And you may think, well, you're falling into your own trap here, Iain, aren't you? You're doing an hour of phone-in on it. Well, I think it's become something that's reared its ugly head again in this country, the class system, and how we should all know our place. Well, I don't think we live in a society nowadays, or we shouldn't live in a society where we know our place. Everyone should be able to aspire to become what they want to be in society, regardless of their background. Surely. It's 18 minutes past 9.
LBC.
In a world full of noise and uncertainty, IG is the investment platform that backs you. Forget the dubious tips from that guy down the pub. Get real-time insights, analysis and tools. No more fat cat brokers clawing your gains. Pay zero commission on your investments. Switch to a platform trusted by British investors for over 50 years. IG. Trade, invest, progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
With the birthday draw, Global and ITV give you the chance to win a life-changing £1 million. In fact, the birthday draw is the only weekly draw where you can win £1 million for just £1. So, enter before midnight on Sunday from as little as £1 or via post at thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. T&Cs apply. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary. Verify at thebirthdaydraw.com/verify.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries. See travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet with Pets in a Pickle. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinappickle.co.uk.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:20. The question we're asking is this: why are we so obsessed with class in this country? What does being working class in Britain mean in the 21st century? And I mean, Andy Burnham has developed this shtick as sort of, well, I'm not going to do the northern accent. I often do, but sort of, I'm just like you. I'm a normal person, and I'm a northern. Did you know I was a northerner? And I think that this is an act which people are going to rather tire of, because somebody who is Prime Minister, I think it's quite difficult for them to pretend that they are a normal person. I mean, by definition of the word prime, it indicates that you're not a normal person. You are in the elite. Not saying you're upper class, but you're in the elite. Yes, you can still enjoy things that you used to do when you were growing up in a working class family on the outskirts of Liverpool. But don't try and pretend to us that you are somebody just like us, because you're not. Stuart is in Bury in Greater Manchester. Hello, Stuart.
Hello, Ian. Are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I can just give you my opinion on the class system, not just here, but perhaps in other countries.
Yeah.
I was born working class, so-called working class, and I would consider myself that. Even though I've done quite well for myself, that isn't the point. But if I were to win the national lottery, say £30 million, if I were to move to Knutsford or move to Kensington, having money wouldn't make me be accepted by the upper class, because I think it's about your antecedent history in England. And I think the difference, say, between Britain, for instance, and America, whereas the class system in America is generally based on wealth, whereas here it's based on your family antecedent history. So, for instance, Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's got money, and he's also part of the so-called upper class because of his historical background, his familial background. Okay, so the class system here is based on the antecedent history of your family. So I could have money, but I'd never be accepted by the upper class if I was going to live in the Cotswolds. You with me? It just wouldn't make any sense. In America, I think generally the class system is based on wealth.
Yeah.
Because it isn't based on, I don't know, whether you're middle class or upper class, although it could be for the old money in America, i.e. the Kennedys, or the old, the rich barons, you know, going back in the day, Henry Ford and all that, because they've got the history there, or John Paul Getty. Are you with me? Because they've got the history, they've got the hundreds of years of history. Whereas generally in America, I think the class system is based on how much money you've got, because they don't have the antecedent history, particularly across as a nation. I mean, just 1 minute, just in Germany, for instance, you say that there's no class system in Germany. There is, because they have an aristocracy in Germany. They have old wealth.
They do, but it's very tiny. And what I was saying is basically you've got this massive middle class, and you've got this sort of small underclass, and then this small aristocracy. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I do think in Britain I could win the lottery. I could go and live in the Cotswolds. I wouldn't be accepted. And when you talk about going to pubs, I could go into a pub in the Cotswolds, which is, you know, it's an upper middle class, so-called wealthy class, and I wouldn't be. I could go in the pub, but being accepted.
I can prove your case there. You think of Michael Heseltine, who came from Swansea, from I think a working class background. Yeah. He made a lot of money through his publishing company in the 1960s. Yeah. And Alan Clark, the former Tory MP, famous diarist, he described Michael Heseltine as the man who has to buy his own furniture. Now, I mean So somebody who had aspirations to climb the greasy pole of society, but didn't inherit sort of old like 17th century sideboards or anything, had to go and buy them.
Yeah, exactly. And so if I were to go to an antique shop and my history, and I could afford it through my history or inherited wealth, or even making money with me inherited wealth, rather than if I went in as a lottery winner to buy the furniture, I think the shop would sell me the furniture, but they'd look on me a little bit of disdain. Yeah. Because so that's my angle on wealth and pubs. You know, pubs are cross. How can I explain it? Working class, middle class, and upper class. Everybody can use a pub, but that doesn't mean that if you're a certain class system, you will get accepted in that pub.
No, and of course, there are pubs and pubs, aren't there? There's the old-fashioned spit and sawdust pubs. Yeah. And then there's like the one that I went to near Tunbridge Wells recently and ended up paying £550 for a meal for 5 people. And I'm thinking, this isn't the kind of pub that I used to go to.
Exactly. It's like that. You would never get Jacob Rees-Mogg going into Wetherspoons. And if he did go in, he'd just be laughed at because he's classed as an upper-class twit. I'm not saying that he is, but likewise, if I were to go in a pub in Kensington, Chelsea, having won the lottery, they'd accept me money for the beer or the cocktails or whatever, the champagne, but they wouldn't accept me because I haven't got the antecedent history. I haven't go to Eton, I haven't got inherited wealth, not part of the royal family, I haven't got old money.
Okay.
So that's my point, Ian.
And you've made it very eloquently. Thank you very much, Stuart. Let's go to Lauren, who is in Kilburn in London. Hello, Lauren.
Evening, Ian. I'm listening to you, and I think this is 2026. Do you really think in this day and age people think too much about class? And the guy that was on before and the guy before, it's all about money and what you've got.
Well, I don't think money can buy you social status. I think that was the point that Stuart was making there.
I know, but the thing is, you're born in... I'm working class, and I think I've done pretty well. There's pubs I would go into, wine bars I would go into, but there's other bars I wouldn't go into because I know a bottle of sparkling white wine is 80 quid, and whether I had £1 million, I wouldn't pay that. It's what you feel comfortable in. That's what I think. And I don't look at... Luckily, I can buy what I can afford. There's a lot of people that can't. But do you think people in this day and age think too much about working class?
Well, politicians seem to. I mean, when Andy Burnham made this announcement today, he says about pubs, this is our heritage. It's working class culture.
Well, that's where he was wrong. Heritage, yes, but this working class, he's digging a hole, and the hole's getting bigger.
Totally agree with you. That's why we're having this conversation tonight.
But I'll tell you what. Not every person can go out working class and buy a £900 dress from Victoria Beckham. No,
you're referring to his wife on the day he became Prime Minister.
Anyone. Is that working class? Because I know a lot of people that have pretty good jobs and they wouldn't, first of all, they might afford the dress, but they wouldn't pay that money for. They might buy one at 300, 400.
Well, I blanch if I pay more than £200 for a suit. I don't know what that says about me. I was about to say something. No, I'm not going to say that. I'll get into great trouble. Lauren, thank you very much indeed. Now, before we go to the news, one of the great comedy sketches, which is now 60 years old, the 3 voices you're going to hear in reverse order are Ronnie Corbett, Ronnie Barker, but first, John Cleese.
I look down on him because I am upper class. I look up to him because he is upper class. But I look down on him because he is lower class. I am middle class. I know my place. I look up to them both. But I don't look up to him as much as I look up to him. Because he has got innate breeding.
I have got innate breeding, but I have not got any money. So sometimes I look up to him.
I still look up to him. Because although I have money, I am vulgar. But I'm not as vulgar as him. So I still look down on him. I know my place.
You see, that sketch was written and performed in the mid-1960s. Every single word of that could have been written or performed today. What does that say about our society today? 0345 6060 973. Jane says, I found Burnham's statement about pubs and working class quite cringe, if I'm honest. My wise late father wouldn't place he or our family in a class as he didn't believe in the concept. I distinctly remember asking him. He was right. I think it's an outdated concept. Why put people in boxes? Repubs, I really wish he'd chosen to help small local cafes. So many people don't drink, and a local cafe, not a big chain, is fabulous for the community. It doesn't exclude people sitting in the daytime or families. What class is a person who patronises coffee shops, I wonder? Well, I suspect that what you'd find is the stereotype would be if you go into your local cafe, you're either probably, well, no, see, I'm not sure this works. I was going to say you may be working class, and if you go into Pret or Starbucks or whatever for your morning coffee, that makes you kind of middle class. Does that really work? I don't know. 9:30. Daryl Jackson has the news headlines.
Andy Burnham's paused the early release of some prisoners in the next round of a scheme to tackle overcrowding. Under legislation brought in by the previous government, some 6,000 inmates were due to be freed in September. A mother and her teenage daughter have died after getting into difficulty off the coast of Essex. A 7-year-old boy is still in a critical condition in hospital after emergency services were called to West Mersey. And the price of oil's gone back above $100 a barrel for the first time since May. Donald Trump's threatened major military punishment for Iran after its allies, the Houthis, fired on 2 tankers in the Red Sea. LBC weather: showers in western and far northern Scotland tonight. Dry with long clear spells elsewhere. Lows of 11 degrees.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
How much has been spent? My listeners want to know.
Straight to the point.
We have 2 different stories. Which is the truth?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
What the hell lesson does that send to our children?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store.
Ever notice how some things are just standard? Traffic on the M4, standard. Meetings that could have been an email, standard. But at Aon, our cars are driving the new standard. The new Aon V has rapid charging, standard. Panoramic glass roof, standard. 8 years servicing, 8 years MOT, 8 years roadside assistance, and up to 8 years warranty. Also standard, thanks to our Great 8 promise. Search Aon Auto to test drive today. T's and C's apply.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN. Subject to coverage.
When it comes to shutters, you need to call in the experts. That's why thousands of happy customers choose Hillary's every year. Every one of our shutters comes with a 10-year guarantee as standard, and our UK-made shutters can be fitted in as little as 3 weeks. And if you find a cheaper quote, we'll match it, because we know you want the wow factor for your windows at the right price. And right now, save up to 50% off selected shutters in our summer sale. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. Conditions apply.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
9:33. We'll come back to your calls on class in just a moment and why we as a country, I think uniquely in the world, still seem to be slightly obsessed by it. I remember when I first went to live in Germany, and everyone there kept saying, "Oh, the British class system," and I kept saying, "What are you talking about? This is 1983. It doesn't really exist anymore." Well, I was wrong, wasn't I? Because it's very much alive and kicking. So we'll come back to your calls on that in just a second. But first, we haven't had a lot of Donald Trump news lately on the programme, so let's correct that now, shall we? Because he said today that his landmark nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia depends on the Saudis taking steps which means they would have to formally recognise the State of Israel. He posted this on his Truth Social platform earlier today. The civil nuclear deal, there will be no enrichment of material, ! Being made between the United States Department of Energy and Saudi Arabia, which pertains only to non-military use such as the ones that Iran and UAE and others already have, will be approved, but is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the very respected and successful Abraham Accords. The United States is not opposed to civil non-enriched nuclear facilities. Well, earlier this evening, Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, spoke to reporters inside the White House, and she gave an update on this.
He wants to see these countries sign the Abraham Accord. It was one of the most historic accomplishments of his first term, and it continues to be a long-term goal of his to expand those accords to ultimately come to a place where the Middle East can be a peaceful and stable region. And yes, this deal with Saudi Arabia, the energy deal, is contingent on this condition as far as the president is concerned. So we'll continue to talk with our Saudi counterparts to get the deal finalized and hopefully see them joining the Abraham Accords very soon.
Caroline Leavitt there. Imran Bayoumi joins me, Deputy Director and Resident Fellow of the Geostrategic Strategy Initiative at the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Centre for Strategy and Security, who's also a former policy advisor at the US Department of Defence. Imran, thank you very much for joining us this evening here on LBC. What are we to read into this? Because from that statement I read out from Donald Trump, it seems to me as if he's added a condition here, which maybe the Saudis weren't possibly aware of before. Am I right in that?
I think your read is right, and thanks for having me. I think this is a recurring theme with the Trump administration, where at times it seems like parties agree to a deal and then conditions are added on after the fact. I think Saudi probably sees the deal as what they signed, and I think this is just a wrinkle. And we'll have to see if it means the deal doesn't progress forward, or if this is just noise, and in the long term, this doesn't actually impact what was signed yesterday.
Because a few years ago, it was rumoured that Saudi Arabia would be signing the Abraham Accords and would recognise the State of Israel. And then October the 7th happened. I mean, a lot of people think October the 7th happened partly to stop the Saudis doing this. I mean, I'm not sure the exact truth of that. But the Saudis have always had, certainly behind the scenes, a reasonably cooperative relationship with Israel, haven't they, despite maybe some more violent public announcements?
I think so, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. So when the Biden administration was considering a civilian nuclear deal for Saudi Arabia, they were conditioning it on Saudi normalization with Israel and recognition of Israel. And so, continuing the Abraham Accords there. That's why I think Trump's announcement yesterday that the deal would be signed without this condition was all the more shocking, and why we saw this almost walk back overnight. But I think Saudi Arabia sees itself as a power in the region, and it wants to demonstrate that it sees a path forward for a Palestinian state. I think, the kingdom is probably worried about potential domestic blowback, regional blowback, if it doesn't adhere to that view. And so it's been consistent about this being a sticking point for them, and I don't expect them to drop it just because of the president's post.
And has there been any public reaction from the Saudi government today?
I've seen some reporting that says, we signed something else. A social media post doesn't change the reality of what we signed. But again, this is a president who is not afraid to use force to get what he wants. He's incredibly influential. And so we'll have to see what actually changes, if anything at all.
Well, and we should also remember that, he and Mohammed bin Salman, they are very, very close allies. I think I'm right in saying that Saudi Arabia was the first country he visited in his second term.
You're correct in that. But I would also point out that there's been some tension in the relationship as of late, especially over the war with Iran. I think you've seen MBS and the President Trump, that is, diverge on their goals. The Gulf states are not involved in this round of peace negotiations or the exploration of this MOU. And so I think as close allies as the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are, Saudi also wants to secure its own interests, regardless of if the U.S. will back it or not.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Imran. Very clear there. That's Imran Bayoumi, Deputy Director and Resident Fellow of the Geostrategic Strategy, I'll get that right in a moment, Initiative at the Atlantic Council Scowcroft Centre. Right, back to your calls on the British class system. Why are we so obsessed by it? William is a new caller, and he is in Wolverhampton. Hello, William.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. What would you like to say?
Well, I think there's two things we get wrong about the class system, and your earlier caller got it wrong, because class is more than just economic. Like the US, it is purely economic, but in the UK, it's more social aspects. So when your caller earlier, he called Jacob Rees-Mogg upper class. I wouldn't call Jacob Rees-Mogg upper class.
No, nor would I.
And then he then used a rude word, I think twit. But the thing is, that's the second problem, is that we're both upper middle class and the working class. There's too much tension, because the class system isn't a bad thing. It's just how we see it, though, because you have working class people look down upon upper class people for being, a twit, as your caller said earlier. But then the upper and richer class do look down on the working class to seem thick. And the class system, I think, in Britain, as long as there's social mobility and people, the very bottom, having their living standards raised each year, isn't fundamentally a bad thing. And the reason we always bang on about it is because of our misunderstanding of the whole system in itself.
In the end, it comes down to three words, doesn't it? Know your place.
I guess so, but I think after the obviously I'm quite a lot younger than you, and in the 80s and 90s and 70s, you see people move up class, and I think that's blurred the lines. I think there's a clear class system in the 50s, but now we don't understand. Like my mother, for example, she comes from Bolsover. That's very working class, but now she became a doctor, and she's still working class roots, but she's not working class now. So as you were saying earlier, that's right. But I think we've just muddled it up so much we don't really know what the class system is.
Well, I suppose any sort of definition of class changes over the years in some ways, but then again, some things would remain the same. You automatically think that if people are involved in manual work, in manufacturing maybe, that they would automatically therefore be defined as working class. And that would have been the same in the 1950s and probably today. But then there are so many new aspects to our working life, our society today, that sort of blur the boundaries, I suppose, a little bit. William, great call. Thank you very much. Helen says, my parents never went to the pub in the village where I grew up because they didn't have the money. They were lower middle class. Well, that's an interesting one. I remember in the village that I grew up in Essex, that when I was growing up, there were 3 pubs. And there was one that was much posher than the others. There was one that was sort of middle, and then there was one that you would describe as a traditional working class spit and sawdust pub. And you would have a very different group of people going to each. Now there's only one pub in the village, and everyone goes there. It's a complete mix. It doesn't matter whether you've got London commuters going in it, you've got people who work in the agricultural sector going to it, and in a way that's a healthy thing. But when Andy Burnham talks about, let me find this quote again. What did he say here? Wrong piece of paper. This is exactly what he said. This is to me our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back. So we've just got to signal what support when we can. That's why I've made this early announcement. This is a significant cut to the business rates that pubs and other venues pay. Just a word to apologise for my slightly hesitant reading today, because the reason I wasn't here last night was because I woke up on Sunday and I couldn't see out of my right eye, so I had to have an injection yesterday, and which, believe me, was not exactly very pleasant. So I can still only see properly out of one eye, and it doesn't make it easy to read. So apologies if you think I've gone a bit odd over the last couple of hours. Well, I am a bit, aren't I, anyway? Nick's in Vancouver. Nick, what's it like in Canada? Is there a similar class system in Canada?
No. The class system in Canada is like the one in the US, and the reason is quite simple, because we don't do accents here. And the thing that I think is so oppressive in Britain is that you can tell someone's class as soon as they open their mouth. And there's this sort of subtle micro judgment that happens every day, and I feel it as soon as I get off the airport, get to Heathrow Airport. I can immediately sense the customs guy judging me by my accent. I can immediately sense when I go get a coffee. There's that, and I do it myself. I immediately fall back into that routine myself of judging the person that's serving me and knowing that I'm being judged, which just does not exist in North America at all. Everybody sounds pretty much the same in North America. You have regional accents, but it does not denote financial or social status.
Well, you say that. But I mean, if you think about some of the more southern accents in the United States, I think people rush to judgments about those just as they would if somebody ran across Andy Burnham, for example.
I mean, there are some extremes, but the reality is, you can have southern accents in the United States. You might think all southerners are stupid, but you don't think individually one against the other. You do not think that, I'm trying to think of George W. Bush, for instance, has a roughly southern accent. You don't judge him as stupid or poor. You think he has a roughly southern accent. In England, we so key on the way that we speak. And I think the other thing that's important to realize here is we think of this as being sort of, well, it's unfair, but that's all that it is. The reality is the countries that do well are the countries that are not dominated by their upper class. The middle class are the movers and shakers in the world of business. When you look at why America is as successful as it is, why Germany is as successful as it is because they're not oppressed by an upper class that runs everything. And the upper class, wherever you are in the world, I mean, it's not a particularly English thing. It's just we're the only ones that allow our upper class sort of all the breaks. But the upper class,
well, hang on a second. I mean,
they're comfortable. They're not pushed. They're not movers and shakers the way they are in the US, and Canada, and China, and Korea, and Germany. For the simple reason they've achieved everything.
I don't think this country is run by the upper classes in the way that it used to be. I think there is still a sort of establishment, certainly in governmental roles, that runs the country. I wouldn't describe them as upper class, though.
I think the reality, but when you say know your place, I think that's the problem. I think that our class system, it doesn't. I mean, it gives the upper class a leg up. But what it really does is, I'm middle class. I moved to Canada because you feel in Britain that you're just not able to get a leg up the ladder.
Really?
As soon as I got to Canada, yes, really. Just in terms of, I can remember my father putting on his old school tie to go see the bank manager because I come from a family that is slowly dropping down the ladder, right? My dad went to Bedford School, which is a minor public school, but that got him a mortgage. You know, my grandfather, on the other hand, couldn't get a Visa card. You know, he wasn't allowed.
Well, okay, back in the day, I think you've probably got a point, but I genuinely don't think that is the common experience now. That I think people can move between, if we want to use the word, between classes much more easily than they used to. I think if you work hard, if you have something about you, you can get on in life in this country in a way that was more difficult 20, 30, 40 years ago.
I think it's probably better than it was 30 years ago, but we're nowhere near the level of the United States or other countries where it literally just doesn't exist. I cannot see us producing a Bill Gates or a Stephen Jobs because these are all middle-class kids that now dominate the world. We haven't produced a company like Google or Microsoft in 150 years.
No, nor is any other country in the world apart from America.
And China, and Korea, and Japan, Germany.
No.
Volkswagen.
Yeah, that's a company that was founded like 100 years ago.
There are. I mean, I would point to Siemens. There are many examples of large companies, and we're not doing it.
Look at. We have to look. All right. Well, let me quote some of you: BP, ICI, all sorts of different huge British companies that have been founded over the years. I mean, we can trade companies backwards and forwards. It doesn't get us anywhere.
But you mentioned two companies that were founded in Victorian ages that are slowly descending. That's the point.
No, they're not.
We have to do something because we're being.
Well, BP is a world-class company. It's a huge company.
Yes, and it's one of the two large companies that the UK has.
Well, it depends what your definition of large is, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, HSBC and BP are the two largest sort of on the world stage companies that the UK has. Again, both old companies. We're not really competing, and I think that's the problem of our class system. You know, and I don't want to put Britain down. I think we have the talent.
You're doing a good job of it, mate.
Talent is, well, I think we have the talent. I don't think we let the talent sort of move. I think the city sells off medium and small size companies that look good quickly.
Oh, that is a big problem, because if you look at the fintech and the AI sectors, we've created a lot of these companies, and when they get to a certain size, the Americans buy them up, which I think is a great shame, but there we go. Nick, thank you. 10 to 10.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Andy Burnham says saving Britain's pubs is about protecting working class culture. What do you think he means? Plus, what are we to make of Tyson Fury getting his 8-year-old daughter to punt products on Instagram?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Summer with my kids is paddling pools, barbecues, making those lifelong memories. But that's not every family's summer. We hear a lot about winter hardship, but for families facing poverty, summer can be one of the hardest times. Schools close, free lunches stop, the pressure builds. Bernardo's gets it. They're working alongside families with practical help to take some of that weight off. To find out more about their important work and how you can help, search Bernardo's.
LBC supports this message.
The Ford Puma and the all-electric Ford Puma Gen E. Stylish, bold, and as driven as you are. And now, you could win one. Take a test drive in any Ford Puma to enter and be in with a chance of winning either the Ford Puma or all-electric Ford Puma Gen E. Search Win a Ford Puma to book online. Ready, set, Ford. To enter, take a test drive between the 1st of July and the 31st of August. T's and C's apply, 25 plus only. For details, see ford.co.uk.
When you go abroad, everyone knows the best way to make yourself understood is to say everything in English, but louder.
4 beers, please, garçon!
Just like when you amplify your advertising with radio. 40 million listeners every week get the message. See radio differently at radiocentre.org.
London, the app for black cabs is here. Jump! Get about with drivers who have the world-famous knowledge and know every street in London. And unlike other black cab apps, you'll only pay the meter fare. No booking fees, no surge fees, no it's raining fees, no there's a game on fees. No fees ever. Just tap the app to hail your black cab. Jump, the app for the cabs that make London, London. Download Jump today.
Iain Dale on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
9:53. One of the things that you get when you're a presenter or a producer on LBC, you get lots of pitches from PR people saying, would you like to feature such and such on your programme? Some of them are more interesting than others. Now, Chris, in the break, has just told me that he's had this letter. Let me read you a section out of it and see if you think that this pitch is going to work to persuade us to have this person on our programme. Dear Chris, I'm getting in touch as I'm working with Queen's Park Book Festival, who will be bringing a wonderful range of writing talent to their North London home from the 5th to the 6th of September. Each year, authors are welcomed by thousands of audience members for a stimulating weekend of literary events in the beautiful parks. Would you be interested in featuring or listing the festival's events in a future article? No, we're a radio station. Or in a potential interview with one of this year's speakers. Award-winning broadcaster Iain Dale will be discussing his new book, Have I Said Too Much? A refreshingly honest account of his life and careers in business, politics and the media. I think we should get the guy on. He sounds absolutely perfect for the Iain Dale show on LBC, don't you? Anyway, she's been very clever here because she's got featured on the programme, which she might not have done otherwise. Queen's Park Book Festival, 5th to the 6th of September. Maida Vale, be there or be square. Right, back to the class system. Sal is in Paddington. Hello, Sal. Now, Paddington, that's not far
for you. That's not far from Maida Vale. I'll be there.
Yeah, that's not far from you, is it?
So, I am a first-generation child of immigrants, and I'm the first member of my family to have gone to university. I'm the first member of my family to speak English without having a heavy foreign accent. And I went to the University of Cambridge. So class is something that I've...
Posh.
Well, that's what people always say. But the reason that I speak this way, and I think we've spoken about this before, is because at the age of 5, I heard workmen making fun of my mother's English and saying that it was clear that she couldn't possibly be the one who had called them in, because talking like that, she probably didn't have the money. And that I stopped speaking for over a year because I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to help my mother and speak properly, and people would think badly of us. Right? The class system is particularly pernicious when it comes to the children of immigrants, especially if we're not necessarily outwardly white. Because often what has happened is that if you are considered foreign, that in itself puts you in a class of your own. And you end up seeing that wealth is then the next. It's, you know, like you've got the hierarchy of needs. There's a hierarchy of oppression is the wrong word. A hierarchy of disdain.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Whereby if there are certain factors that can mitigate for others, but they have to do an awful lot of heavy lifting, and if at any point you end up falling even the tiniest bit short in any other of the criteria, the fact that you are foreign will actually would more likely be that you are pushed out and othered than retained.
I think that's a really interesting point, Sal. Thank you very much. We've just got time for a quick call from Ranjit in Albury. Now, Ranjit, you are a small business owner, but I suspect you would self-define as working class, would you not?
Mate, I'm common as muck, mate, and I
join the club.
I'm definitely working class. A long time ago, somebody asked me, why is it that people have fish and chips on a Friday? And I said, work all week, and on a Friday got paid. He told the old girl, listen, I'm going to bring a treat home, and you doll yourself up and we'll treat ourselves. Now, when people come in, I say, does anybody need any mortgage advice? He says, what for? I said, to buy your fish and chips. And if Burnham wants to do anything, because basically a chip shop a week now he's shutting down, probably maybe 2 a week. And he needs to do something about that.
Okay, Ranjit, thank you very much. But very good point, well made. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening and throughout this week. I'll be back on Monday evening from 7. There's a new episode of the Where Politics Meets History podcast out in the morning. Make sure you download that. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Clive Bull. But right now, the very posh Ben Kentish.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Dude, hello there. Very good evening. I'll stop talking like this now. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish right here on LBC. Tonight,
this is, to me, our heritage. It's working class culture. Once pubs are gone, they don't come back.
Andy Burnham tells Britain's pubs the cavalry is on its way as he announces plans to cut their taxes. According to our new Prime Minister, he's acting because he wants to protect working class culture. Is he right, in your view, to say that pubs are an integral part of Britain's working class culture? Or do you see this as actually a load of patronising drivel, making out that somehow pubs are all like the Queen Vic or the Rover's Return, rather than something that people of all walks of life in this country enjoy? Is there any need to make this issue all about class?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation, this is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, Andy Burnham has paused the early prisoner release scheme to tackle overcrowding while he reviews the policy. A further 6,000 inmates were due to be freed in September as part of